Bless up for tuning in to Project Chaney. Magic happens when you question everything. Conspirituality becomes reality, weirdness is welcomed, and it's okay to change your mind. Big up yourself.
Hey, you guys, welcome back to another episode of Project Chaney. As always, I am your host, Chaney. This episode is an interesting episode. This is actually the second time that I've done the intro, and I finished. I put the whole entire thing to bed. I was about to upload it, and I was replaying what I said, and I just felt like it wasn't responsible enough. And I think I was trying to think of what the title was going to be, and I went over a bunch of little quippy things in my head, and then I was like saving the episode and making sure it was all locked down, and I was like, I think this episode is saved. It took a long time to get out. It was a little going back and forth. I think when you listen to how heavy the subject matter is, you'll see that it was just fragile a little bit, and it deserved to be fragile a little bit. And I needed to be a little more fragile with the intro, I guess. So I was thinking of how I would explain somebody's faith to somebody who doesn't have faith. Why somebody might need something in the darkest times of their life. Why it might be really important to not feel alone and feel like there was an energy caring for you always, even before your soul's conception. I've heard a lot of these stories in my lifetime of Jesus walking with people, and Megan's is definitely one of those stories. So I'm really lucky to have Megan on this episode. She's somebody in the hard year of 2021, 2020, 2021, both these years now, where we're all kind of trapped in our states and in our houses and in our hamster wheels and with our black mirrors looking out into the world. And I was a person, I've been married a long time, so I didn't ever internet date. I didn't make internet friends. I'm lucky enough I have pretty great people around me that I've got to meet in the flesh and blood, and with a lot of faith and a lot of rituals and a lot of magic and a lot of other things I've kind of brushed off and thought were silly. I thought the idea of an internet friend was silly. The idea of really getting to know someone on a next level basis, that you would consider them a friend. And maybe where these internet friends knew you in ways that your flesh and blood friends didn't. And I'm also in this other microcosm of the world, which isn't such a microcosm, of podcasting. And Megan's a woman in podcasting. And in our world, it's a dude's world, talking about conspiracies and putting our opinion out there. It's getting more and more women, but it's still a very male-dominated field. And Megan, her voice in her show, Truthzilla, that she does with Scott, you can listen to that episode. It's my second episode. And Ed, it is a future episode that is in the books. They are like three people that they have this thread that runs through them of truth and just fighting for something light and something good. And they all three have very different paths. And, you can hear Scott's on episode 2, but Megan's path is quite different. And her story is a truth monster all its own. And parts of it are hard to listen to. And they're hard to listen to a stranger talk about it. And it's hard to listen to this strong podcast host talk about it. And it's hard to listen to a mom talk about it. And it's hard to listen to my internet friend talk about it. But I feel like she does a really great job of putting into words what I find hard to. I've been blessed enough to get to grow up through Christianity, and my logic has led me down so many other religious paths, and I think there's a real beauty in all of them. And omnism, where I believe that my way to God is by finding a little piece of him in every school of thought. And because I grew up Christian, it was the easiest for me to find all the fallacies with first and all the evils with first. And coming back around on my journey and really being surprised in mine and Megan's conversations that she called herself a Jesus girl one day, because I thought like, oh, she's total tarot oracle crystal girl. There's no way she's Jesus girl. So when she brought this up to me in a conversation, I knew, like I etched it into the Etch-a-Sketch of my brain of, if I ever have a podcast and if I ever interview Megan, I have to ask her what this Jesus girl, like I felt that in life for sure before. And maybe everybody has, when somebody mocks your faith. And, faith is one of those things that if you've never had it, it's very easy to mock, but it's also very, very easy to be jealous of. Yeah, you guys can find Truthzilla everywhere. I asked Megan to plug it at the end and she doesn't. I will put it everywhere in the show notes, but I really thoroughly hope you enjoy this episode. I did. And yeah, take a listen.
The green monster. Okay, so let's see. What else? Have you started recording?
Yeah, but this is all I do. This is how I introduce my show. Okay. I just say, "Hey, Megan, welcome to Project Chaney."
Hi, Chaney.
Welcome. How are you?
I'm well. How are you today?
I am doing pretty fantastic. And I'm glad you're here.
I'm glad to be here. I'm glad to talk to you finally.
I know, it did. It's you were a hard person to iron down for a call.
I am so sorry. It's true. I hide from my phone, and it's pretty bad. I have all my notifications on all of my forms of communication always turned off, and I just check one kind of consistently. It's pretty. Oh, the ugly dark truth is coming out right from the get-go.
Right. I think it's pretty fantastic that you stay away from all that stuff.
It's more just because I want to filter what I am exposed to. So I'm going to real quick check Instagram. I'm just going to post these 2 really fire memes, and then I'm logging off immediately. So
that's awesome though, that you have that willpower.
Yeah, I mean, I think I've just turned into a bit of a hermit throughout all of the New World Order, perhaps, or you know what I mean? It's so dark. Anything that you see anymore, I'm just like, and I don't know. But yeah, anyway, when my phone starts ringing, if accidentally it gets turned on, the ringer accidentally gets turned on, I'm just like, this person doesn't know me very well, because whoever loves me or knows me well knows not to call my phone, because it's not. I think I have a voicemail from way back that's still set up, and it says, "Hi, you've reached, my phone number," and I never check my voicemail. If you've called this number, you don't know me very well. You can reach me on Facebook Messenger. If you can't, it's because you don't know me well enough. So have a good day.
I always admire when I call somebody's phone and they're like, you've reached the voice mailbox number of, it's full. And I'm like,
Yeah.
oh, damn. Like they just cut it out. They're like, I'm never checking it again. Sorry.
Yeah. Mine always is. Sometimes I get like a relative that will call me like, the vet is trying to reach you and I think I'm their emergency contact, but they've been trying to call your phone and your voicemail is full for the last 3 years. Oh, all right. Right. So
I have
yeah.
an OCD. I have to get rid of everything out of my messages automatically, but my voicemail box, I think it just is Lionel Richie. Hello, is it me you're looking for? And then it's just
Yes.
right to my message. I don't
That's
say like, thanks for calling Chaney, leave a message. I don't do any of that.
I like that. I like that. Very nice. I'm going to have to adopt something new. And I know there's a way to make it so that you like play your message and then it won't even let someone record a message, which I mean, honestly, that seems like the easier path. Why give people hope? They're going to wait for that long beep and I think like my voice mailbox probably holds like 20 messages. So some lucky 20 got in there under the wire.
You just want a little bit of honesty at this point. You're like, why give people hope? Why even?
It's so true. It's so true. It's so, and then like people are like, well, what's your email address? I'm like, this is not gonna look good either. But I have one email that literally I got some kind of notification from Google that said that it's full because I mean, it's like there's tens of thousands of emails in there. I don't know. I've had it for how many years. I don't listen.
I can't.
I have Facebook Messenger. There's no reason at all for anyone to ever write anything to me in email
I
ever
can't.
again.
Like if I looked at your phone and I looked at your email, does it say like 10,428 by your email? Like, is there a red number that is
It keeps
astronomical?
telling me that I need to buy space because my email is full, which I'm not obviously going to do because I didn't want to check it to get that full to begin with. And so then I started a new one because I'm like, well, maybe I'll use it for just like podcast stuff and like, you know, like something relevant that I must use it for. But then like, well, you know, because I was like, did you send the link over for this, Chaney? Because I'm in my email. I'm not sure how to navigate this treacherous world. So I'm pretty technologically backward.
Your email is like Mary Poppins' purse. It's like you can reach in and you're like pulling a lamp out and
It's crazy this stuff. Like with if I you go to the store, like if you sign up with your email, you're gonna get please don't make me give you my email address. And so now I just give people the one that I know for sure is full and nothing else can get in there.
it's like your hoarder shed email. It like
It's
totally
so
has.
true. It's awful. So yeah, I guess all that to say it's not the easiest always to get in touch with me, but you know.
Well, here you are now. I'm glad
Here
about
I
it.
am. I'm glad too.
The first question that I've been usually going with people, which seems loaded. I like that Paranoid American was just like, whoa, you're like going to start with the easy questions. Who or what is God to you right now?
Who or what is God? That is the loaded question. Man alive. Well, I mean, so this is like the most complicated and simplest answer in the world for me. I think, man, Chaney.
Well, one of the things that you said to me one time was in the world of conspiracy that sometimes you get flack because you're the Jesus girl.
Yeah.
And I was like, that's like a good topic for me to bring up on a podcast because I think in the world of conspiracy, there might be a lot of Jesus girls and gals. And I want to know what that means. So
I think so for me, I believe that Jesus is the Son of God. I believe that like for me, he's it. So I say I'm the Jesus girl because I feel like I mean with frank honesty, I have had a circle of friends, quote unquote, here in town that are, you know, we all have mutual friends, but I guess that they felt that at times there's been things that I've said on the podcast or truths that I've said about like how you like in particular like how like biologically how things run with human beings, that I've gotten that it's, how would your Jesus feel about you, hating, people who are, identify, this way, or, transgender, gay and lesbian community. Like that's been like, I've lost friends over this. And then I have, friends from all, walks of life and all different beliefs who, like most of my friends don't believe what I believe. And that's, I think, kind of the beautiful thing about humanity. But I feel like, yeah, there's been like speaking my truth and speaking truths in the podcast world. It's got, I guess I sort of went off the rails on that. So let me back up. Jesus, girl. uh, how else do I define that? I just he works miracles in my life. I feel like
When were you saved?
Yeah, when I was 19.
How?
19.
Like, what's the whole story, if you want to talk about it?
That's such a cool question, because I haven't been asked that question in many years, Chaney. So I always grew up in a family that talked about God, and like we prayed and we went to Sunday school sometimes, and but like it wasn't like super consistent. And I think too, I feel like, that the soul often will recognize higher power. I mean, that's how I feel. But we operate in the world based on how we perceive things, right? We see the world as we are, even though we try to expand our view. That's a basis of how we see things. But I grew up in kind of like, probably like a lot of people, fucked up environment, and a lot of abuse, terrible abuse between my parents, and, all those kind of things. And so there wasn't like a lot of consistency, but always there was like across throughout all my family, there was the whole, like we pray at dinner time, Jesus is the Son of God. I didn't really have an understanding of what it meant. Like nobody ever talked to me about, like there's the conversations that happen about Jesus in church, and there's like the truth of like human growth, and where you actually have like soul connections to your maker. There are transformations within the soul and the human spirit, and I often term it like open-hearted, open-minded, having discernment, being in touch with your spirituality. I mean, there's a lot of ways that I talk about that, but as a child I didn't identify with any of that, and so God was really just kind of like an abstract concept to me, like, and then when I was 18, I met the man that I married and was married to for 12 years. To this day, probably the best man I've ever known. He is, I think, the man that set the bar for other men as to what it means to love, and what it means to honor, and what it means to have sacrificial, or what I would say, like, selfless love, agape love for his family, for others, not putting himself first, and also being a dignified human. But anyways, again, I get off the rails.
I like it.
He was a godly man, I will say that in that way, when we met. And so I was sort of familiar with, his, I'm going to say in a silly way, his church going ways, his family in church every Sunday and all that. And that was all cute and fine. And, it wasn't personal for me. It was personal for them. And then I started like hanging around him and seeing that something was different about him, the way that he kind of would glow from within, the way he handled people, the way he carried himself. And the longer I knew him, the more I came to discover that he was always, and to this day, the same person, publicly, privately, and personally. And his parents did a really beautiful job, setting standards in place for him, and showing him good paths and giving him good opportunities. But he also did a lot of that work himself. I mean, we're all self-made, whoever we end up being, right? So anyways, it was seeing him and kind of how he just interacted in his world. And I wanted to know what that was that he had. What what was different about this light that he had, and I just could perceive it on him. And so I asked my grandparents, actually, who I was very, very close to take me to church here in Eugene, Oregon at the time, actually. So now we're talking, 20 some odd years ago. First Baptist Church downtown.
I was going to ask what kind of a church.
Yeah, First Baptist Church, big 2-story church. I still remember Pastor Kim. He always had this belt. He was always so well dressed. And it was such a cool church. He always had his belt buckle all the way sideways on his hip. This is another sidebar, but I'll never forget, I always remember sitting in church and why did he wear his belt with his belt buckle all the way sideways, always to the same hip, always. And he was always so well put together. Everything was pristine. So there obviously was a purpose, but anyways, I won't forget that. But I remember sitting there between my grandparents and kind of feeling like, because I was genuinely interested to know what it was about. So his name was Kevin, what it was about him. What is this that he talks about? What is this that he loves? What is this that he finds value in? What is this that he uses to guide his life? So I genuinely, just by a few years, not quite 4 years.
Okay.
So he was, I think, 21 when we met. So, anyways, I think that was the thing, was really having the open heart, really having the open mind, and truly wanting on a soulful level to understand. And I don't know if you would say it's, God's magic or alchemy, or I don't know how you would term it, but at some point sitting there between my grandparents in this big, beautiful 2-story church with the beautiful windows and all the blah, blah, yes, the beautiful words that were coming, but they didn't hit home for me. It was just more pretty words. Yeah, I get it. It's all, yeah, okay, I believe that Jesus is the Son of God. I'm ready to go home. And then he said, and this is, I know it's everywhere, you see it everywhere. It's, I am the way and the truth and the life. And that awakened me. That I felt inside of me. And I knew that was real. I knew,
you remembered.
Perhaps.
You remembered something that you had always known, it triggered.
Perhaps
something.
It triggered that it was real, and that God was who God is. And despite all of the other, I'm not going to sit here and try to tell anybody else that, this God or this religion or that, or this following or that spiritual. I can't speak to all those other things, because I don't know. I haven't researched, I haven't had the heart to delve in. There are some things that I'll say, well, yeah, that's definitely contrary to what I believe to be good or right, for humanity, for people, for what I would think, God's will for his people would be. But in terms of just for me, nothing was ever truer. And I remember even sitting there in the moments after, that little voice in my head thinking oh, there's all this stuff in the Bible, and what about all this contradictory information? We all hear the contradictory stuff growing up, and everybody making fun of all these biblical principles, and it's kind of a joke, it's kind of a game, and somehow Jesus got hammered down into a book that was meant to somehow put chains on people. And really what I found is that it released me. And so, it's interesting to try to put these things to words. But I guess just for me, during that day, Pastor Kim, that day, at the end of all of that, he said that, and I was just sitting there just kind of feeling sparkly, now, it's been a while, it's been over a year, but if I take LSD, I always say it's getting sparkly, right? You're opening your third eye, there's ego death that, depending on what you're doing that's happening. There's a connection that's happening that's not materialistically connected to this, terrestrial plane, but it's very, very real. And I feel this was an extravagant spiritual version that was very organic of what I call getting sparkly in that moment. I just knew it was real. And at the end, the pastor said, and if you would like, Jesus to be in your heart, and, I can't even remember his exact words, if you want to say this prayer of salvation with me, however it might have gone, it's been so many years now. but I just closed my eyes, and with all my heart, I just knew what I was saying was yes. It was yes, it was right, it was true, and it reverberated. And then for many years, I kind of like lived with God in kind of like this back place in my mind or in my life. Like, I prayed with my kids, and we prayed at, bedtimes, and we went to Sunday school. All my kids went to private.
How many kids did you and
Christian
Kevin
school.
have?
So Kevin and I have 3 biological children and 2 adopted children.
And you raised them all Christian?
Correct.
Right.
Yeah.
And did did your older kids ever buck the system?
No.
Or question it? Or they're all, that's pretty awesome.
I mean, I don't like, I don't want to say
not buck
like
the system. That's like, I don't mean it that. I just, it's like
no,
whatever your parents
like
do.
rebel against.
Yeah.
I didn't ever, I don't feel like that we ever like made it like choky, like I feel like we didn't put God in a box. Like, there are some definite like black and white things that we like, we're staunch on.
Mm-hmm.
But like me, I'm just like this dreadlock LSD taken, I mean, look where we are already. You know what I mean? Like I'm pretty mellow with my kids, especially like my younger 3 kids. They have a whole different experience than my older 3 ever had. But, I think that we just made it to be that, God is life. Like God is all around us. God is what, helps to give us like discernment. And when we're feeling that, like, we're being led by our emotions, like, okay, let me take marriage as a classic example. Like, I don't feel loving toward my spouse right now. I don't feel that, we're in love. I'm not feeling the magic. I'm not, all these feelings, right? And I'm not talking like the obvious big, like somebody beat you, if you've been betrayed, like there are obvious deal breakers. But, just in terms of just normal human existence, like we all have our shit, right? Like nobody's perfect. We all have our garbage that we bring with us, and hopefully we try to overcome it. Hopefully we're all on the same level, but we know we're not. And I feel like that, one of the things that we tried to set forward, and to be fair, I'm the one that fucking ruined that whole situation between us. And I don't have regrets on that. I mean, I walked away, I broke the marriage apart. For, I don't know, God forbid I hate to say it like that, because sometime my kids are going to listen to this. That sounded really callous how I said it, but I feel like that we, God, Chaney, I'll get my mind starts going in a million different directions.
I know. I think I'm just like, this is okay.
I know the sun shifted. I'm at the part, so it's like,
yeah, you're not. I'm like, I just have more questions. I feel like you're like a rabbit hole all of a sudden, and I just have more questions.
I didn't want, God wasn't oppressive to me in the way that I was somehow before, his truth was what resonated in me, that I felt like somehow that God was going to be oppressive or like take away my freedoms or like not want what was best for me. There was a mean and spiteful God, or like, I don't know, like I had it's weird to even haven't thought about it in a long time, but I don't feel that that's how we lived our life, how we lived our marriage. And I feel like what I was going to say about marriage is, I mean, ultimately after 12 years, we did get divorced, but in all of that time, when we didn't feel like we had one date in all of the years that we were married, one, because we had all these little kids back to back to back. We were doing foster care. He was working 2 jobs. It was like, I was this young mom in my 20s with this huge suburban house. Like we had this picture perfect dream, right? And he really was and still is a perfect, picture perfect man. We're our chemistry is different, right? Like we share a house now, actually. So maybe that's something we
pretty
talk about
incredible
down the road, but
so that you guys love each other like that.
But not romantically.
Yeah, I think that's. I always, if you tell me you're not friends with any of your exes, I usually think you're an asshole. I think it really says something good about you if you're friends with some of the people that you've been with, because it means that you are both good people. You just weren't meant for each other anymore, or not
Right.
And so
Right.
I sometimes it just is a red flag to me when I hear some, even if it's friends of mine and they're like, that person I dated is a shitbag and that person's an asshole and that person's a this and that person's a that. And I'm like, you're probably the problem. If
Yeah, red
it's
flags.
probably you.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So I just feel like that we always try to just lift each other up. We never cut each other down. That was one of the ways that we showed our children, like, it was beyond our emotions for each other. Like, we tried to show them a higher love based on the best that human beings can do, knowing God in the way that our brains could possibly even perceive him, given this, one book that's filled with this incredible amount of information, but it's like translated from another language, and you have to kind of get into, theology, and, I mean, you and I both go down rabbit holes in other ways. So you know how that can be. And it takes like anything. If you want to know something, you got to get your fucking hands dirty and get into it, and
Besides Jesus, who's your favorite in the Bible? Who do you wish had a bigger story?
who do I wish had a bigger story?
Because I have mine.
Tell
Like
me yours.
the
I think you
two
should tell me
books that
yours.
I need in the Bible. I need the book of Judas and I need the book of
Oh,
Mary Magdalene. Those are the two books that I would have to have in the Bible. And to me, I think Judas is probably the most unsung hero of all time. I think he knew what he was doing. I think Jesus told him he was going to have to do that and that it was going to be the biggest burden to ever carry. But he was the only one that loved him enough to carry it.
that's an interesting spin. That's an interesting perspective. I haven't thought about Judas too much, and it's interesting because, yeah, good thoughts.
Like, I would just think Jesus would already know he was God. So
Well,
he would
yeah,
already know how everyone was going to turn out.
yep,
So it would be really important to him. Like, if he had his follower, he wouldn't pick his weakest follower to do the hardest job. He'd pick his strongest follower to do that job. That's the hardest job of any of his disciples. Judas had the hardest job, or in my opinion.
yeah.
If
I
the
don't
whole story,
know.
or it wouldn't gotten told in the way that it got told. And here's another weird philosophy that I have about it, which I would really, it's nice talking to a Christian because I don't know how crazy this idea is. If God comes down in the flesh of man, and he's always been, and he always had, he's always been there, and he flooded them once, and they still didn't kind of get their shit together, and he watched them for a little while, and he's like, I got to come down and just see what all the hullabaloo's about. I got to see what these people really have to deal with. So he comes down in the flesh of man, and he lives this whole life, and he lives a whole life of probably, total abstinent on every level. No drugs, no sex, no all levels of love. Probably not abstinent of love. He's probably all levels of love, but maybe in ways that we consider now to be some kind, I don't know. But it's weird to me that God would come down and totally withstand a whole bunch of sect of being human. But I also believe when God was crucified, he would have wanted to be crucified the exact way he was crucified. Like a gun to the head would have been too quick for God. He would want to
Right,
feel every fucking second of a human death because he's
right,
God. Like, that's just
right.
one experience he never had before. He's God. He's been around forever. Can you imagine how fantastic that 33 years was for him? How different and lively, and just he was always around doing all these great things, universes, great waterfalls, whatever he's doing. But then he gets to come down in the flesh, and yeah, living might have been cool, but don't you think dying was its whole own fucking awesome thing?
I don't know. That's wow.
This is where
That,
my head goes all the
I'm
time
like,
about Christian
wow.
stuff.
I am not. We might have to. Dare I say, circle back, Chaney? That's.
You're like, all right, you got too high for me on that one.
I'm like, all right, hold on. I need to have my head stop spinning for just a minute. Wow. I don't know that I could immediately comment on that. Those are very unique perspectives that I had never
I
put
really
in my
like the
mind like that.
Bible. I grew up Christian. I've been born again after I grew up Christian. And then, but I never felt it. I always wanted to. I tried to go through every action of every way I could feel God. I tried Buddhism on. I looked into Hinduism stuff. I tried atheism. That never really worked. That was the shortest amount of time that I'm like, no, I have this like this search. I think it's omnism now is what I am, where I believe that God like there's a piece in everything of God out there, and I'm on a search to put the puzzle together.
Ooh, that's interesting. I'm going to have to go down rabbit holes after we're done with this conversation, actually. You've really opened up some interesting scenarios.
Well,
Yeah.
it's easy to just do I know, Mary and the moon and Helena and Archimedes. Like, I know you could, or not Archimedes, Artemis. Wait, Archimedes is the owl from Sword in the Stone. But, but
Archimedes.
yeah,
That's
Archimedes.
it.
Yeah. But I just know like all the weird connections of everything, how they can take like Thor and be like, this is Jesus Christ. And they can take all the symbology of the 3 years or the 3 days or the Son of God. I know all the symbolisms because I'm a nerd through all the religions, but I also know what the Bible, I know the little stories and things that it has that other religions don't have that really intrigue me, just as far as my conspiracy head's concerned.
Well, as to the conspiracy part, I will say that I believe that we're watching the book of Revelations rolling out in front of us, like sentence by sentence. And that part of the Bible, I wish was more. I mean, that is the one book that hasn't come to pass, right? Like we're living in these times. And so when I see what's happening around us, like with New World Order, and I see like the shit that's coming down the pipelines and all the evil in it, like, I know we said ahead, I was like, I don't want to talk about truth or stuff, Chaney, like not even a little bit. But so just real quick, but like it's crazy to be awake to everything being so connected in this crazy fucking matrix. And we've got child killers and child baby rapers, literally, like that's the currency of the world that we're like rolling through. And seeing everything that's so connected in this way. There's like there's this fictional book series which I Left Behind. I don't know if you've ever heard of it. There's this Left Behind book series. It's phenomenal. It's phenomenal. Like I could not I've never read any other Christian literature that was like, fictional literature. Never, ever. I recommend this stuff. I mean, it's probably been 15 years since I read these things. Every single thing that they hypothetically roll out in this book is like I'm like, we could just be reading the Left Behind series and we could have the book of Revelations open and we could be looking at Bill Gates and what's happening like around. It's just that's the part that intrigues me in terms of like when I start to get into my conspiracies and I see what's happening in a real world sense and I start comparing that with like scriptural things or like historically, like just historically in terms of just the nations, like what do we see happening throughout history, what are we seeing happen, like all that stuff is what totally turns me on and gets me super excited. So that's the one book I think that it intrigues me endlessly. And I wish I once had a Sunday school teacher that I went to with Kevin, and they would break down the book of Revelations and just like really slowly every Sunday for like an hour. And I just remember just like being so thirsty for more. It was just like so like you just like like we always say, like some things you just feel it. And like even then I was just like I felt like the electricity around it, like this is that perhaps that we were going to be living through these times, that this book is talking about. So that kind of stuff kind of blows me away.
Didn't you did you always think we'd be living through these times even when you were young? Like, it's something about you. Did you ever feel normal, or did you always
No. Nope.
Yeah.
That's a good question. I have never felt like I fit. I think that's the best way to say. And I guess I always have I tell people like now I keep to myself more because I feel like is it my life experiences that made me kind of like this doomsday girl? Like I don't want to be this negative energy. I'm always talking about negative energy, toxic energy, but fuck, I'm full of like so much like doom. And it's not because I'm seeking it, but I just like will see what I say, or say what I see. And I'll talk about what I've experienced really openly. And a lot of times, I mean, you know, some people's, you know, that movie is As Good as It Gets, and it
Yeah, Jack
has
Nicholson and
Jack Nicholson, and at some point he's talking to Greg Kinnear and Helen Hunt or whatever in the car, and he's like, you know, some people's stories, they have noodle salad and they go on picnics, and their story is like, they're happy stories. These families have happy stories. They have stories about picnics and noodle salad. And I'm like, my story isn't noodle salad at all. And I was talking to a buddy the other day, we were sitting there smoking a joint, and I was like, you know what I was just thinking? I said, you know, and I was telling him something that was dark, and I was like, I'm so sorry when I do that. I said, I I try to keep to myself for that reason. And it's truly not because I have a heart for darkness. That's not where my heart or my spirit is. But also we're living through kind of a dark time, and a lot of, you know, I went through in these last few years, a lot of things happened in my life too. And I just feel like as I've become older and more in tune with who I am, how I am, the way I process things, the things that I don't process so well, and I really reflect on who I am, I have said for many years that I don't feel like I fit. I don't feel normal, whatever that means. I just have never felt like I was that girl, that I saw things the way that other people saw things. And there's definitely been like huge swaths of time in my life where I just like went along with the flow. You know, when you're trying to figure out who you are, you have your influences around you and you do the best you can. But like
get on the
personal
hamster
growth,
wheel.
it is personal growth, self-growth. I almost feel like life has to shake you up or break you sometimes before you're able to pull back from some of that running in the wheel and actually have a glimpse at who and what you are, or start to come to terms with that.
I don't feel like you're dark at all. I don't get that
No?
energy read from you at all. And
Oh, thank
I feel like that
gosh.
about myself a lot, but I just think it's because I'm not scared to look into dark places. It doesn't frighten me. Like I'm not scared of anything. And I also have just come to the terms, I think over the past few months, that darkness isn't evil. There's
Right.
totally like difference, like somewhere the evil has taken over the darkness. But it used
Yeah.
to be, I think, spirits that were very comfortable and very protective, and the darkness probably protected the light, but somewhere evil hid in it, and then people stopped looking in it, and
Right.
now the light is polluted by the evil as well, and they're, you know, wearing pope outfits and dressed as presidents,
Oh
and
man.
you know, and so it's
Yeah.
like evil's in plain sight now. It used to have to hide in the dark, and so there was only a few people that weren't scared to look. And
It just masquerades in the light now. And in fact, that's what evil is now. I mean, evil calls itself light. It's just complete inversion, you know, and it's and the older I get, the more clear it is to me, you know, in particular, like when I'm around other human beings. I went through a really intense relationship with somebody that, you know, all of his colors and all of his energy were telling a story that was different than what was happening with his words and in our behavior together a lot of the time. And so it really it made me doubt and shut off huge parts of those honed skills of mine, those intuitions, because I loved him and I thought I must be wrong. Like I started to believe that I wasn't perceiving these things like I actually do, like I actually can, you know what I mean? But
yeah,
it was dimmed. And I'm still, you know, picking back up on it, but healing takes time.
do you think
So
that all of that, as traumatic as it was, that will eventually be something that will be part of your gospel, that you'll be able to save people because of it? Like it almost becomes a chink in your armor that makes you like a stronger soldier or something?
I think that there's been a couple of things. Can I tell you about the really fucked up things?
Yeah.
So there's been a couple things that I always say, this is what I say to Scott all the time. Maybe not all the time, but because I always feel like I can tell Scott my truth, you know, like he's kind of one of my people. We have an interesting, you know, relationship.
And if anyone's listening to this, you can go back and listen to episode 2, and Scott's on it, and he's
listen to
from
Scott.
Truthzilla.
So let me say too, real quick, that, and I think I said before we started recording, that Scott is like a pure human. And I said this, ahead of time, that the things that he does in this life, the people that he helps, the way that he is with other human beings, he is among the most highly respected humans that I've known in my life. He and Ed both. But Scott and I have known each other longer. We had a little bit of a history. And so I am more familiar with more particular things about Scott, but they're both, I am blessed among humans to get to know not one, but both of them. They are constant rocks. The way that they are with people, the way that Scott is with people, the way that Scott's been with me. Sorry, so I get off track about that. Anyways, they're good men, and they've been good to me. And but what were we saying right before that? Because the fucked up things. I always tell Scott, especially when I'm being an emotional creature, which bless his heart, because I don't know how he puts up with it out of the blue from me sometimes, but I always say I'm a ruined human. I'm a kind of a ruined person. And part of that, I think, is feeling like I never fit. And, there was, my dad built a pipe bomb when I was little, because my mom finally found a way to escape him. And when he found out, and he finally started getting visitation with us, he was going to put a bomb in our garage door so that after he took us for visitation, he was going to blow her to kingdom come. Well, he blew himself up. He went to prison. He blew his arm off, blah, blah, blah. Years down the road, there was some connections with him, But
how old
there was
were you?
that. When all that happened, I think I was 7, maybe.
And your parents were split up, and then he was still like in love with her, and if he can't have her, no one will, kind of shit.
This is interesting how that rolled over to my adult life, how I saw shit like that is what love is. But so yeah, he wasn't a good man. And
was he ever a good dad?
I always say I think that my dad loved us in whatever way someone who had his disorders could love. I think my dad was probably a sociopath. And based on research that I've done because of my own circumstance as an adult, and also just years prior, just because psychology was always such a huge interest of mine.
What sociopath to you?
He lacks the ability to empathize with other human beings. He does not bond with other human beings in the way that you or I would bond with a human. And so, you can hurt people, and you're not conflicted, in whatever way. And it goes much deeper than that. I mean, it's diabolical, and it's very, it's complicated and nuanced, but I guess just my own, if someone just asked me like, okay, well, what, I would say my father didn't have a conscience.
Well, I mean, it not even to be conspiratorial, but they say that the elite do this to their children, and that the best CEOs in the whole world of all the biggest companies all are sociopaths, and you have to be to get that far in business, because you can't care about humanity if the bottom line's a dollar.
Agreed. And that's part of, again, that's how it carries over into why I'm passionate and can say the stuff that I say on our podcast, because I fully agree. And I mean, you asked me this question. I have a sort of a fucking memory, and it's going to come out why, but I have real serious memory loss issues, and in particular with short-term memory. So a lot of times when I say this on our podcast, I'm like, oh my gosh, you guys, I lose my train of thought. I say I fall off the rails, but really I completely black out. And a lot of times I just never remember what it was I was saying. And it happens all day, every day with everybody. And I'm better at controlling it. I'm super hyper aware of it happening, but because of some traumas, my doctors have told me over time throughout the years, as the brain heals, that shit will get better. And it has to a large degree when I think of where I was 4 years ago or 2 years ago, whatever. But so forgive when I get off the rails and I drop my train of thought. I used to be,
I have no judgment. I just think that I'm so stoned that sometimes I lose my short-term memory. I'm like, did I smoke too much pot? I totally lost my train of thought. So I have no
Oh,
judgment.
I love it. Um, so anyways, we just had kind of an unstable, life. I moved like 20 some odd times, like 27 times by the time I married
Shit.
Kevin. Um,
So
you
he probably
know,
felt very stable to you as well. Like he probably
and he
felt
was.
clean
Oh
and
yeah,
stable and
wholesome,
good
and yep, absolutely. Never to this day, never has raised his voice to me, never once in all the years we were married. And
and kind.
not, I was not a good 20-something-year-old wife. I will tell you that. I was definitely, I had some breaking down to be done in my own spirit to be softer and become a good woman. I did my best, but I was a fucking kid, and I came from an adverse background. It's not an excuse, but it is a real explanation, I think, if I were still the same girl that I was then, I could probably be ashamed of myself, but, I'm not. We grow, we learn, I've made amends with him for my, shitty behavior, just, kind of a bitchy, horrible, screechy, yelling, discontented wife, when I had no reason to be at all. But anyway, so all those kind of things happened. And then I had a really super bonded relationship with my mother. And I think probably as the years have gone on, I've realized unhealthily so, probably I had like one of those moms that obviously was an enabler because she was with my father. And,
How long was he in
very,
prison for?
I actually don't remember. And no one
Okay.
is still living that would know. So
Okay.
I thought about looking it up, but then I was like, I don't know if I want to open like
Did he just
wounds that
kind
I
of
don't remember.
disappear in your life a little bit?
For a while, and then he got out and he had a new girlfriend for a number of years, and he abused her much the same way he did my mom, though not to the same degree. And then eventually she escaped him, and he never did have another
Your mom was
consistent
free
love.
of him that
They
part.
never they never ended up getting divorced all the years of their lives. But she escaped him at some point, and they both, kind of moved on about their ways. At some point, his stalk, like especially after he blew himself up, the stalking.
I'm sorry to laugh at that. You're
No,
like,
it's okay. It's been a long time now, and like if we can't laugh on some of this stuff, we're in
you're like, that's
deep
a deal
trouble. So,
breaker to me. If you if you
I
wear
mean,
Reeboks with tapered jeans or try to blow yourself up in my driveway.
that's right. How in touch with you are you with your own psychopathic behaviors before we can go out? Because I had a dad, and let me tell you, I have these issues. So, but anyway, so it was an interesting childhood, and then, my mom kind of tried to live out some of her younger years as like, a mom in her 30s, and kind of partied a little bit, which wasn't the best when I already came from kind of, like, I don't know, at the time, I didn't think anything of it. At the time, when you're living your life as a kid, that's normal. Whatever happens in your household, that's normal.
Yeah, I've seen pictures of you as a kid on Instagram, and your energy, and I know all kids are like innocent, but you just seem like you have this energy of like such a sweet, good kid. Like I was an innocent kid. Like when I look at my pictures of my wife when she was little, I know she was just such a nice, good kid. So this is extra, like I was a different kind of kid. Or if I look at pictures of my brother, I know he wasn't a good kid, but there's some kids that I'm just like, oh, they were nice kids. And so this is so extra horrible that this, not that it should happen to any kid.
No, of course, I know what
You
you
just
mean.
seem like
No,
such a sweet kid.
and honestly, I had an amazing mother. She did the best that she could. She had a horribly abusive husband that she adored, and interestingly, same as with my situation, the reason why she eventually walked was because he was betraying her. And same with me, the reason why I eventually walked was because I found out that I was being betrayed, and that was the end of it. But anyways, but I was very attached to my mom, and I think that because of her life circumstance, she probably made us feel like she was kind of helicopter mommy, which I loved. It was great. Even in my 20s, talked to her every day on the phone for several hours a day, like that kind of mom.
You're like bestie.
And like besties, like, but my mom always struggled really, really hard financially. Like, we were homeless a lot when I was little. We lived in the car. And then even after I got married and stuff, we would try to help out and stuff. And she was getting like government, help with houses, but she didn't have anything to fucking eat. We're taking her groceries. Like she struggled, like she was a good woman that had a hard go. Like her dad was no better setting their shit on fire and beating my grandmother than you know what I mean? Like this shit runs in cycles, right?
Yeah.
Everyone's just doing the best they can with the pieces that they were thrown into, right? So, but my mom struggled with depression. And even when I was really little, she would say, like, I remember like she didn't always drink, but at some point in my teenage years, she started drinking. And she would like start to get drunk at night, and then she'd be like real emotional. And she'd take me off to the side and say shit like, if I'm not in the house in the morning, just you come out to the garage. And if you find anything, then I want you to call this number, our emergency contact, whatever. Like she'd take me through these like rituals. I always knew she wanted to kill herself, like not that she always wanted to, but I should say there were periods of time in her life where from
like
when I was really
where
young.
You were old enough to know what that was. You knew she
right.
wanted to.
And that because she would talk about like, and she cried always, we struggled always. Like she was always hiding from my dad. Like he like would go and like fucking kidnap my younger sister from school and like have us chasing him around town in the car and like, just like, man, the traumas that happen to you,
trauma.
it is. Yeah. So,
and then
like,
you feel like you can't provide for your children, which is a whole nother layer. And then you're feeling like a loser from, because what am I going to have to go and suck a fucking dick to feed my kids?
Right.
Like, I mean, it sucks, but it's just like the 2020 that just happened to everybody. It was like the financial peril of normal, good people that I heard real friends of mine in. It just gave me kind of a little more being able to relate to so many people in the world and then layer kids on top of it. Like then add kids not being able to take care of them.
Well, that's the thing. Like she didn't have, I mean, and I say this carefully because I'm a stay-at-home mom. So like, and this is like not to dog it out. And I feel like I carried this heavy burden. Like I didn't do something with my life. Like that was the picture that was painted for me for so many years because I was a stay-at-home mom. Oh, I didn't pursue my law degree. Oh, I didn't do this. Oh, I didn't do that. Like that somehow that was like, I felt like
that was part of our conditioning. That's how they wanted to break down our family unit. So they just made women feel like we had to go and be men.
And that really fucked me up as a parent to my kids, like it's still like a conscious thing I have to unlearn. But I say all that to say that she didn't have quote unquote skills. Like she wasn't about to leave 3 little kids with a man who was hunting her down and stalking her with who ? While she goes and works what fucking job? Like, there's just, I know that women do it, right? Like women do it every day. I'm not saying people can't, whatever, but like I'm speaking to my circumstance and her circumstance and like the way that it went down for my family was like she didn't overcome those struggles, like she tried so hard so long. And then 6 years ago, 4 days after Christmas, she lived in California and she had come up to Oregon to be with me and my family, with my younger brother who still lived at home. He's 15 years younger than I. We share a house too, actually. We have a big house here in Eugene and there's a lot of us there. So interesting stories, how stuff comes about. But she came for Christmas and then she hanged herself in the bedroom above mine. So
she was visiting you. Yeah. And with your whole family's there and your brother.
So all my kids were asleep and my husband had gone to work. And at that time I was remarried. I've been married twice, both to very good men, I will say. John was my second husband. He's actually the one who's talking to help me relocate to Florida, Chaney.
That's fantastic.
But she had been going through some terrible shit and I knew that she was down. And the night before, she like did stuff that she wouldn't normally do. And now that I'm like deep involved in the whole like, suicide, anti-suicide movement and all that, be aware of the signs, like now it's so clear. And all that to say, I also have struggled with suicide, thoughts, and I've depression. I've, been a self-harmer. So, you know, this isn't a judgment call, but like as much as people say, you got to check on your friends. Well, that's true. But at no point when I've been suicidal has a friend popping over to my house and keep me company for a few hours or calling every day been what stayed the bullet, the knife, or the pills, right? Like there's something that's broken inside, or maybe it's an awareness. Sometimes I think it happens to people who are hyper aware of all the different truths, like not just what we're talking about governmentally, but like deep psychological truths. Like when you've been through trauma and you start to like see the different ways that people fracture and break, or maybe the ways that we don't come back from it, you know, like, I don't know.
If you're feeling like suicidal, if it's okay to say, I know everyone is always scared to even say these words because then it's like, oh my gosh, forever. What is the feeling like of right now where you're not feeling suicidal? Is it a voice in your head that's talking louder than other voices? What is
It's inescapable hopelessness.
And it makes you feel as if you're not here, it'll be better for everybody else? Or it doesn't matter about anybody else at all. It's just you.
I mean, for me, for sure, I've thought about like, you know, at some point, it's been years now. At some point in them, I was going through a divorce with my second husband. I hadn't recovered from what had happened with my mom. I was still kind of a shut-in, and I started falling into hopelessness. I was self-harming, which is kind of hard for people to understand because I think that people think that means like if you're cutting yourself, you're trying to kill yourself, which is absolutely not the case.
It's just feeling something. It's having control over a feeling.
It's for me, cutting always alleviated how bad it hurt inside.
Is that why you tattooed yourself as well?
No, but the pain of tattoo is a rush.
I know, I always thought so too. It was like putting ink in a scar.
If I get stressed, I used to be, there was one time where I got really stressed out and I went and had 4 tattoos in a week because I'm like, I just got to hurt, you know, I just got to hurt. But when you're lost, when I've been lost, you know, like just, it's a little macabre, but I laugh about it. I don't mean to make anyone uncomfortable, but like, you know, my arms are real super scarred up. I didn't always cut. I was like a period of, it really started, it was right before she killed herself. I was going through something really horrible in my marriage, and I was having postpartum depression, and I didn't understand what any of that was, and I was feeling hopeless, and that was my way of coping at that point. And then shortly thereafter, she killed herself, and then I've always been like holistic girl, and then I started seeing a psychiatrist who I tallied it up. He was prescribing me 7,000 pharmaceutical pills a year. Adderall at the same time as Xanax, 2 different antidepressants, an antipsychotic, 2 things to help me sleep.
Holy shit.
It was a lot. I lost 70 pounds the first year. Couldn't eat, couldn't sleep. But I also didn't kill myself, right? It numbed me out and stuff enough. And I do think that some of that has to do with why I have memory issues, like such a fucking huge amount of drugs. I mean, I only ended up doing that for like a year and a half, and I actually didn't even ever take everything that was prescribed because it was too much, you know.
You just get so numb, you don't feel anything anymore, but you don't feel happy either. You're just a shell,
flat, empty. And there was just all these things, right? So she hanged herself. I went upstairs to go get her up that morning, and she didn't open her bedroom door, and I'm holding my new baby in my arms. And I couldn't get in, and then I think I just knew that something was wrong. I think I knew that she was gone.
Did you replay all, like, immediately every other time in your whole childhood and youth, like, waiting for this? Like, every story, like, like a flash?
I started replaying more the night before because, like, my mom was, like, a wonderful mother, but she loved my kids. But she wasn't like that doting grandma. She's like, oh, give him to Grammy. I want to have him over the weekend. Like, she wasn't that grandma. She was like, listen, you wanted to have kids, you fucking raise your kids. I love those babies, but like, you know what I mean? Like, she wasn't hands-on in that. She'd cook us big meals, kiss their faces, you know, bake them things, but she didn't like sit on the floor and do puzzles. Like, that just wasn't really her vibe. But like the night before, she like wanted to bathe my baby. Like, can I give him his nighttime bath? Oh, I want to read the kids a story, like that kind of stuff. And I was like, wow, that's really fucking cool. Like, right? Like, she wanted to like hang out a little bit longer before she went to bed. That shit, that morning when I was standing outside that door and I started pounding on it with my fist, and pretty soon I realized that my fist was starting to split open. Like, I was I didn't even realize
You were
till my
trying
knuckles were splitting.
Knew, like your all your
like
spiritually,
like I knew. I had like a little axe there because it was like this outside room. There was an axe outside, and ended up freaking beat the axe off the doorknob. I went into the room, and I swear to you, to this day, I literally felt like something evil pass by me when I opened that door and leave that room. Like that there was a demonic influence, like palpably moved by me. But I finally got through the door, and here I'm holding my baby arm. The room is dark, but they're in the corner, you know, and she's hanging. And it was, there's not a lot that I remember after that for a long time. But it was
it's so traumatic. You're like, it's just, does it just sear in your brain and then just cut off your life until you?
Well, I mean, I remember some other instances from that morning, right? Like, there's all these things, like, you know, it's interesting. Like, we were trying to fix that room up for her. We were trying to fix it. Is this all way too dark to be talking about?
No.
Okay. We wanted to fix this.
Talking about it. I don't want to seem cold, like, or
no.
Okay.
Maybe it's sometimes I feel like too, when we say the things that hurt us, like it releases the energy. Do you know what I mean? Like,
and I also feel like there's so many people that don't have the words. What I'm realizing in this whole thing, where people are really kind and complimenting, is sometimes when we podcast, when we spellcast, we find words that other people have been searching for a really long time. And so sometimes with the harder topics, they're the less talked about things. So the words are probably even that much harder to hear even somebody else say it. Even the word suicide.
It's
like,
it's heavy. It's a lot. I mean, I have a girlfriend from high school that took her life just over COVID, you know, like it happens all around us all the time. You know, I go to these suicide rallies, or back when we were allowed, and they always have you hold up these beads, right? They'll say, if you've lost, you know, a spouse, you hold up this color beads. If you've lost a parent, you hold up gold beads. If you've lost a child, you know, you hold up whatever, white beads. It's always my hope now, having lived through ugly things, not that my words would be sad, even though they are, but that they would be a roadmap to other people to find light. You know, that you can be at the bottom and be all the way ruined and come back and help people with what you bring back. I have this meme that I posted, and it says, I love people who walk out of the flames and go back in carrying buckets of water for those who are still burning. And I hope that that will be the song of my life, because my story is not noodle salad, right? So anyway, you know, we found her that morning. I ran downstairs, and I will do things so different now, Chaney, had my mind not been completely so fractured in that moment, right? I grabbed my little brother out of bed, 15 years younger than me. Said, something happened to Mom. I regret that. I regret that. He was the only other person at home that was anywhere close to being an adult. And I took him up those stairs with me to find our mother hanging there. And those are things I would take back. I guess I found out years later that I brought my young children outside to my mother on a gurney and said, say goodbye to grandmother. because I guess I wasn't even processing that they would see her again at a funeral, or like I wasn't thinking, like I just wasn't working,
Death is
like I
so
just,
numbing anyway. I can't imagine like the trauma of that. Like immediate death of somebody, watching somebody die in a hospital bed is trauma. And
right.
finding someone that you know is sick or old is traumatic. Finding someone that's maybe suicidal is traumatic. But
Yeah.
you weren't planning on any of this in your life at 4 days after Christmas with your mom visiting, and in your life. It wasn't like you were in her house in your youth. It kind
Right.
of was like, seemed like you were kind of free of that fear because now you're in your safe space where you're like secure. And then
Yeah.
that it's weird that she came into that space, but maybe because it did feel, if she was haunted by something, she probably felt safe there and around all of you guys. And I know I get people, I don't know how I think of suicide. I know people are like, it's so selfish and it's all this and it's all that. And I'm like, what if it's like your last time around? What if your last time around, you're like, I decide? I don't know. I don't want to have any judgment, but I also believe that you said a spirit came by, and like Grimes, Elon Musk's wife, she says something. She's not a necromancer. I know I have people that would yell at me for not knowing this, but there's like this spirit of suicide that like gets on people, and there's specific ways they choose to kill themselves. And it's by hanging or pills because they have to have enough life in the body to jump ship to the next body before death.
Yeah. Yeah. I really think a lot of, I am like all about like the presence of like energies, and like that they move, I mean, I would say that those are demonic energies, for sure. But like, I mean, I've had demonic people in my life, and it's interesting because we think it's monsters, right? We think it's what we see on the screen. And I mean, it is, right? But not the screen that we were taught. And it's interesting that, and I think there's like a meme that I read some years back, and it always stuck with me. But it's like, as a child, I never imagined that all of the monsters in the world would just be other people. They would be our neighbors. They would be the people that say they love us. They would be the people that we said that we loved. You know,
Yeah.
and because the flesh, that's just the meat suit. It really does house the part that's real within people that the eyes don't perceive. And that's where discernment and like understanding energy comes. But that's not something they teach you in school, and it's definitely not something that was talked about in my house growing up. Like, and so, I mean, some of the people that I even know now, when I start talking about energies or witchcraft or the presence of like, like this or that happen, like, I know I'm protected, but that doesn't mean that shit can't trip me up. And I'll talk about this. People are like, oh, that's so what, woo woo out there. I'm like, it's not. Like,
You could be a witch for Jesus.
it's real. Absolutely. I like it. I like
I'm
it.
meeting all sorts of witches from all different walks of life. I think it takes all kinds. An alchemist for Jesus, whatever title you prefer.
I was thinking an alchemist for Jesus. I can do it. So it was kind of all of these fucky things, right? And then I finally started to come out of my shell. It took a few years, and
Do you feel your mom with you now?
no, not like that. Like I feel her presence or her aura, or
Does she
like
ever give you
remnants.
signs of anything? Does she
No,
ever leave you anything, or have you ever asked her to?
no.
Well, you definitely should. You should. I don't know what, like,
I don't think I don't have a healed relationship yet with, like, I can talk about it. Like I definitely didn't used to be able to just talk about it, but like, um, I chose where, like, we did a natural burial. We didn't want her embalmed. See, this is other traumatized. Like, we prepared me and my siblings. We prepared her body for burial, and so like
so you
we
just
were
were like, I'm
handling.
gonna put myself through all the trauma.
I didn't. I wasn't even. I didn't have anybody in my ear
You
telling
are a
me this
triple
maybe
Sag.
isn't.
You,
Big time,
you
right?
needed some grounding somebody and to be like, you don't need
But
to do this part.
that was when I needed my mom to be like, Megan, fucking snap out of it and like let somebody else handle some shit. But like, to this day, like, there was one natural burial place that was local that you know would take natural burial. Like, I'm sure I could Google it. Oh, I wouldn't Google it. I would duck.com it, or Scott would probably shame me and say to use whatever the new one is. Um, but I don't know where she's buried. I couldn't drive there right now if I wanted to. Like, I couldn't find her. I had two doctors. I had two shrinks. One was the one that was pilling me, and the other one I call very affectionately my Shrinky Dink. Do you remember Shrinky Dinks back in the day?
Yes.
You like color on the little plastic, put in the oven. It was like magic. Okay.
Yes.
I didn't get those very often, but I remember getting them once for sure, and I remember those being like the coolest.
They were kind of like stained glass, but
yeah,
not.
like, and they would like shrivel. I just remember there was like strawberry shortcake and rainbows and all kinds of cute, like, whatever. But anyways, I always have this like fond memory of these. And anyways, at some point after my mom died, I had been on all these meds. At some point I took myself off all those meds without asking my doctor. I just was like, I had a terrible car accident, so I won't even get deep too, because I'm going to go too deep into everything. I had a terrible car accident, and at some point right after, like literally right after that, I was just like, you know, all I am is numb. I don't remember anything. I'm not available for anybody, and I'm not living life, and like, it's done. I'm done being buffered, you know. So I just quit taking all the pills. So that was an interesting come down. But I never did really recover from depression, and it got really bad. And then we moved, and I was going through another divorce, and that was really ugly for a while. And I started self-harming again. It was getting pretty bad. And then I like you asked, what does it feel like? I just woke up one day and I just thought, if I had the strength right now, I would get out of this bed and go hang myself from the deck. And I was thinking, but you could never allow your children to find yourself that way. Okay, well, I've got pills. I can take a shit ton of pills. Well, I've got weapons. Well, I've got knives. Well, I've got, like, right, we're creative creatures. We can figure something out. And I called my sister and I said, I'm not okay. And I need you to come pick me up.
You have a voice in your head at all that says, get away from the pills. Get away from the gun. You're not strong enough for that right now. Get out of this room.
Like, I knew that I knew that I was hopeless. And I said, I need you to come pick me up and take me to the hospital. I think I need to be hospitalized, because if you don't come pick me up, I'm not going to keep being here. And that was it. I went to the hospital. I told them that I was hopeless, and they were able to contact probably my old doctor and see everything I had ever been on, and see that I took myself off all my meds and whatever. I mean, there had been time passed. It wasn't like a few months. It was like a year or something, you know, time had gone. But I just didn't really recover well. So I was in the hospital, and it was there, the doctor that I had there, his name was Eric, Dr. Eric. I call him my Shrinky Dink, because he never medicated me. He helped me to figure out the proper way, without any more toxicity, to exit the marriage that I was ending at the time, in a way that was mentally healthy for me and safe for me. He helped me to see a lot of things. And one of the most profound things that he said to me, and he was the hospital doctor, and he wasn't taking new patients, but after I got out of the hospital, I came to find out later, it was like I was there like 8 or 9 days. But you know, when you're in the hospital, you're like, I mean, I was willingly there. I could have checked out, but I was there to get help. And I was meeting with him every day and going through group exercises, and like actually starting to establish some sort of a baseline, you know, some grounding, some direction. Like, he had me write down goals. Like, what do you need to do to feel like you can make it through your days? What do you need to do to feel successful? What are the things that worry you? When I really could put it down and pinpoint things, that was my compass, you know. So I got out, and he continued to see me. And it was during one of those sessions, and I just said, you know, I'm not normal. I want to feel normal. Like, one, how do I get over the constant, you know, I wasn't the word I used with him, but the ruminating about my mom. Like, how do I move forward? Like, how is that her face in the dark hanging there, not always what I see when I blink? Like, how do I get past this shit? You know? And he said, well, we used to think that trauma was, and he like made this like circle with his hands, you know, and he kind of filled in the whole circle with his hands. We used to think that trauma would like shade like this area of your life in the circle, or it would shade that area of your life. That's what psychologists, psychiatrists used to believe. And now we're understanding that true trauma, it shades the entire region of your life in all of its particulars, from within to without, spiritually out and then back within. And so what happens is with trauma is that you don't erase the shading. What happens is your life, and he grew new bright lines around the shaded circle that he had made. And he said, your life grows around the trauma. And when I saw that visually, him making like this, and in my mind, it was like the center of a flower, and like the lines could be squiggly going around, and it was like blooming. Like I started to understand that this, I'm not going to be better. Like I'm not going to wake up tomorrow and I don't
like
feel
your
this.
trauma is just fertilized shit that your seed's about to grow out of.
Basically, yeah. And he said, the other thing he said was, do you ever look at her? Do you ever look at her stuff? And I said, no. He said, well, when you're ready, put a picture of her up somewhere. That's what I suggest. Where it's maybe not like right in your face like your bathroom mirror, but where you see it when you walk by. When you're comfortable with that, you'll be healing. And it took a couple months. And I didn't go back, actually. I've never been back since that time. A couple months later, I put a picture of her out. It still sits in the same exact spot. I haven't changed it. But I'm at peace with that picture.
And it doesn't
picture.
ever replace your scar, but you can remember her as a living thing again, and
right. I think it was.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Like my situation with my father wasn't nearly as traumatic, and I have my own regrets. Like I tell anyone, if you have anyone dying, get in bed with them. Like just get in bed with them. Like don't feel awkward. Don't feel weird. Just who cares? Get in bed with them. And so it took me a while to put a picture up, and it's like my dad on a scooter in Key West with like a cigarette in his, it's such like a chill, like him. He doesn't have kids that day. He's probably buzzed. Like he's in such a, but it makes me happy when I see it.
Yeah. Yeah. And it rehumanizes out of, I say like you say, like not all darkness is bad. That's true. But darkness can still be scary and hard, like not all dark is evil, but some of it's really heavy, and I think it helps to rehumanize some of the darkness around some of the ugly, and like those final memories, those final visualizations of like what things looked like and how things sounded and what they went and how, you know what I mean? Like it's just, so I started to heal from all that, Chaney. And this
did
is
God
where
help you? Like, did you feel like in your darkest, was there times that you felt carried? Like, the footprints, like Jesus, like there was only one set of footprints because I was carrying you.
I know he was. I don't remember feeling very connected to him at that time, which is, I always say, and maybe other people do too, like if you don't feel God, it's more that you've pulled away and not him. I believe that to be true. I was super fucked off with drugs. I was so medicated for a long time, and then I was going through trauma, and I just really wasn't like seeking out his energy or his truth, not like I was turning my back on him, not that at all. And I think too, in the darkest times of seeing that happen to her, I didn't blame God, because some people say I would blame God, it was not that, or that, if God really was such and such, he would prevent it. That's all the shit that people say when they're trying to be helpful, you know what I mean? But I don't think it was anything like that, but I think it was just maybe, I don't know. I haven't ever tried to put it to words, not necessarily knowing that she was there with him and I'm here without, but it was just a weird dynamic. And so I will say that as terrible as that situation was, it did not poison, corrupt, or destroy my life, or even, I won't say it didn't break my heart the same. That situation did not break my soul. But a few years after I got well, or as well as I think I will be, I'm all of that. I think I'm as healed as I'm going to be. Like time will pass, and maybe, sometime I'll go put flowers on her grave. Likely not. That just is not comfortable for me.
You are going to decide, though, a way that I don't know if it's butter. Like my dad leaves me pennies in weird places, not like pennies in my pocket, but in like weird places where like
And you know that that's him.
I
Like,
know it.
that's
And he always had this purse, like this tiny little like coin purse that was ancient as fuck. He was probably like 5 or 6. And his grandmother gave it to him and said, as long as you have these 2 pennies, you'll always have a cent to your name. And so
I love that.
and my dad always would tell me these 2 pennies, and he would say, your word is like your word is all you have, that and these 2 pennies. And so it was always like your word is your bond. It's everything. And then as long as you have these 2 cents, you'll always have a cent to your name. And if your word, you have everything. So it was kind of like a whole thing. So he leaves me pennies in places. And I love it. And it's always like a time I need it. And it's always felt really heavy on me. Like I was one of the first of my friends that one of my parents died. So and dealing with a lot of my friends when their like parents are on life support or no longer seemingly there, or it's like, tell them why they're there, because it gives you validation in flesh that you can tell them like, I want to see a rainbow. I like to see butterflies. I like whatever every moms always have something with their kid. Always. It's
Right.
like every time I see a cardinal, like it always reminds me, whatever. And so I think sometimes you just, because it's like a time isn't linear. You just have to tell the universe, because spirit's trying to contact you all the time. But
probably.
like the same way with, like you see synchronistic numbers, that's like, it's like, yeah, you're paying attention, but sometimes single spirits are trying to contact you, but you have to be the one that's telling your mom how you want her to.
And I really do feel all of that to be true. I really do. And I think this is part of the reason why, as much as I try to shield myself from talking to other people and I try to hide out from the world, as we've previously discussed, really moments like this where we learn from one another. It takes, like you saying that to me, where it lights something to me where I know that it's true, where I'm like, you know what, I needed to hear that because now I'm going to implement that in my life. This is the part of human growth. This is the part of human healing. This is a part of human connection and relatability. All of these, you telling your story, giving me something to grasp onto and be like, you know what, now that you say that, I am in this moment consciously aware of the fact that I am subconsciously in constant attempt of blocking out nearly all energies from my existence, from almost everybody. And that has to do with the part where I was going to say that God did carry me in his arms like a weeping child, still to this day. And I know that he was with me. It's more of just me not I think I will say, like I say, I was more pulled back and not feeling it, not asking for his comfort, not asking for his guidance, not asking for his peace. I wasn't asking for those things. I wasn't praying for those things. I wasn't praying at all. Now, again, not because I was turning my back on him, but I just couldn't. And a couple of years later, my grandma, who I was next closest to in my family, who had to live through all that, she was the most beautiful, amazing woman ever. Like, you would have loved her. She died really suddenly.
What was her name?
Barbara. Classically trained pianist, beautiful, graceful woman. She was lovely and empathetic and kind and gentle. But we lost her, and it was the same with her, because I saw the pain of burying her child in her face. So after she died, my mom died. I like totally closed my grandma off for the time that we had left with her, foolishly thinking I had forever, right? Because I just couldn't bear to look at her. I couldn't bear to see in her eyes what I felt also.
And you were a mom, so you could actually relate to her, that feeling. And your grandmother, which is fucking insanity to me. I don't have children. So the idea of having that kind of empathy for your grandmother losing her child, why it was also your mother, is fucking heavy.
I felt like the biggest piece of shit on the face of the earth after she died, though.
You're a fucking hella empath.
I
think you're so huge of an empath.
Yeah,
you can't even be around everybody. You take it all on.
Yeah, so I started to heal from all of that. I was housebound a lot, you know, like I didn't interact with the world. And then Facebook, of all fucking things in the world, I started connecting with people like in Hawaii and like Thailand and like California and Colorado, wherever, like people, you know how Facebook, you just whoever.
Yeah.
And I was like seeing them live their lives, like pictures at the beach and like them laughing with their fucking kids and like hugging husbands and like people, chicks hiking with their cute hiking shorts on. Like I was seeing people live life, right? And that started to pull me out of my shell, right? This was after I had been hospitalized and I was home. They had put me on, they had recommended when I left the hospital, it was something to help me sleep, Ambien, I think, Ambien and something else, whatever. I took for a super short time, but I didn't want to be hazed at all. It sucks. I'm a lifelong insomniac. So to this day, you know, I really did like those pills to help
And that's
me sleep,
how we're
but
friends.
you know, it's like the middle of the night. What are you doing? I'm having a fire. What are you doing? So, yeah, so, but this is a really interesting and complicated thing, and I think I do want to touch on it because it has shaped everything to this point now. Everything's to the needlehead it is now because of what happened after all of those things. I had been free of my marriage, I don't know what, a year or two, a year and a half, I think maybe 18 months. And I got online and I met somebody. We happened to go to high school together.
You have 6 kids.
I have 6 kids, yeah. So I have 2 adopted children and 4 biological children. So at this point now, 3 of my children are grown. One's married. Another one is, you know, lives about an hour away. My other kid, who will be 19 next week, my youngest of my 3 older ones, he's a wildland firefighter. He's doing online schooling for EMT stuff, you know. But
awesome.
And then I have a 14-year-old and a 12-year-old, my adopted children, from when we did foster care in California. And so they've been home with us since they were babies. And then from my second marriage, we had a little surprise guy, and he's just turned 9 at the 1st of April. So anyway, so yes, I at this point now, I had moved from where I was, where my mom had died, and that house we'd moved. We bought a house in Eugene. I was, you know, there with my kids, raising my kids, doing my thing, trying to make my own furniture, trying to grow, you know, I'm not a green thumb at all. I murder everything I try to grow. Thank God it's not up to me to grow weed. I would never make it. So
we do not give you that job when we build our society.
I am a connoisseur. I will tell you that for sure, but let's not count on me to grow it. So, you know, but I was just doing my thing. I was doing my vibe, and I was just like, you know, I was in, you know, 2 marriages, one not quite like the first, but both good men. But I realize now, as a woman of my age and my experience, what chemistry is. And I didn't have that kind of chemistry in either of my marriages that I ended up having with this person that I met. And he was and is, and I am very careful to say this because I am an overcomer of narcissistic abuse. And for people who haven't experienced what that means, or for the people that throw away that term narcissism, like, you know, you have a vain girlfriend, or people that show too much on the social media and people use it as like that punchline. But it's a real psychopathy, you know, it's a real thing.
And so you met somebody online.
I met somebody online, and we went to high school together. I didn't really remember him all that well, but I knew that we did. And so there was that familiarity, you know.
Did you talk online before you met in person for a while? Like, did you build the intimacy of the relationship before you met in physical?
We've talked, I think, for like a week before we met.
Oh, okay. Okay.
You know?
So you were like, you're close. Let's the chemistry was already there writing.
He was super seductive, right? Like, I just didn't realize.
am asking this because
I understand.
Online is another, especially with 2020, so many people that never even hung out online before have some of their best friends they've ever met in the world online now, you know, and they're meeting relationships and sharing intimacies online. And so I just didn't know if you met like that and it was a long relationship.
No. So this was like at this point, this is 3 years ago. So this was prior to COVID. The world was still normal. I was still somewhat in the matrix. I wasn't like fully red pilled yet. Like I didn't have any fucking, I knew like some things, but I had no idea of like what I do and what we talk about. I had no idea. Like, you know, so, you know, we met and it was just fireworks. Like he wasn't any kind of perfect, right? And this is part of, I think, the healing of it, where I hesitated and I said to you before we started recording of talking on this. And I've been writing a book about it, actually. I'm a writer. I've been a writer since I was very little, never published anything and never actually finished anything that I started, but I have all of these I have all these boxes of all these writings, right? So this might be the one.
And you're really a great writer. I like when you, even when we're just like writing to silly text back and forth about our day, like you're really great and you put a full picture with your words.
I appreciate that. I feel the same about you. Every time we talk, I'm like, Chaney, you need to be writing books. You realize that, right?
And it's so
like,
crazy because I don't write anyone. Usually the extent of my writing to people is like, hi. And like, I'm usually make people text me or like call me. But you, this is probably why you refuse to call.
You're like, can you just be like a cool grown up? Because you're like in your 40s now, Megan. Can you get on the fucking phone? I'm a little bit worried about that for tonight. Can we just smoke a joint quietly and just text back and forth? So, but
so I'm kind of glad you kind of brought out this, like, I used to love writing and like even that kind of like poetic nature of it all, like the dichotomy of words, finding them and how they look written out is so different than how I hear myself say them. And so, yeah, I'm actually grateful for that.
You have a super melodic flow. I love good writing, and most people are not good writers. Most people can't even complete proper sentences. And I don't care, whatever, but when somebody does and when they put a flair to it and you have this poetic whenever, you know, like I get excited when you start saying things in a certain way, because it's like, not only like you end up conveying true energy. Like it's so strange to try to say and explain with words, but to be able to pick up through someone's writing and actual energy is like, it's moving. And it doesn't happen very often to me. Like I say, like I think it's, anyway, so you should write. I
feel the same about you. And it makes me excited because I feel like we have this like genuine friendship that it's rare that I have a friendship with somebody that I haven't chatted with all that much. And so like, this is the extent of our longest conversation.
It is. Wow.
I mean, we don't have like a whole room of boys hanging out.
It's true. It's true. I like it.
See, I need to be good at it.
Well, when I get through with all the sob story and the crying, but truly, I do think, I think that there's healing to happen in our stories, and I think that our stories help other people to heal. And if we can't do that, then maybe things really are a bit hopeless. I need healing. I need to hear other people's stories. I need to have the map back to the paths that are right for me. I need to have flashlights that other people shine to help me see the bumps in the road. I need to have sustenance for my journey. And that all comes from other people, from us interacting, you know, from true energy interacting, and from hearing, you know, like you saying, you know, like me being, you saying what you saying makes me consciously aware that I block out energy all the time. But maybe it's time for me to reassess the woman that I was 3 years ago and start to open up and start to be, to a degree, the woman that I was, or pick up on some of those beautiful things that somehow got buried beneath the destruction of what happened.
Or what you told me, you're never going to be that person from the trauma. You're going to build around it.
Build around it.
You're never going to be what you were before. You're actually, and I know it sounds so fucking crazy, the best version of you is still ahead.
And it's hard when you're going through the muck and the mire, right? You're just like, well, fuck, this is where the mud pulled my shoes off. Let me just lay down here and be done.
Quicksand.
You know, and it's, but I will say, and I also want to be careful to say, I don't think that it's proper, at least not for me, to defend my abuser. But for the past year, I tried to convince myself that I didn't want him, or I didn't love him, or it wasn't real, or The things that happened to me didn't happen because I was gaslit, manipulated, and fucking lied to so bad. And there was such a shattering of innocence because I believed in him and I trusted him with every part of me. And just a few days ago, this whole situation with him ended, I think, like probably all relationships or relationship transactions that happen with these kind of people who have these kinds of, I mean, I'm not a doctor to prescribe. I can only attest to what happened to me and to what I went through. And part of the reason why I loved him so much was because of those moments. Like, you know, an abuser, they don't just abuse you 100% of the time. You know, I always remember, even my mom used to have her face shoved through glass mirrors. I got older and I was like, why didn't she just leave? Why didn't she just fucking go? It's just so all you have to do is go, right? Stupidest shit that I ever uttered. And life isn't that simple, and love isn't that simple, and humans aren't.
It's so
that
weird
simple.
that the person shivving you is literally the only person who can take the knife out.
Right.
And so people don't understand that about abusive relationship, is that whatever you're seeing the abuse on the outside, the abuse that's happening internally is so much worse because you're not seeing how golden this person is for me to be so in love with them when no one's around and when all this shit isn't going on. And so it's like the perfect abuse is when the only person who can stop any of the pain is the person causing the pain. And that's how you lose all your friends and all your family, and everyone slowly, they like get you on an island all by yourself. Yes. And then the only thoughts you're left with are your own, but they've broken all that down. So now you're just on a reel of repeat of all the bad shit they told you about yourself.
Oh my gosh. In a nutshell. And the truth is, he never actually really verbally told me, like, he wasn't one of the ones that would dog me out and like necessarily cut me down, but there was an awful lot of, especially early on, there's an awful lot of LSD usage, and an awful lot of LSD usage in the terms of a sexual context. And I will say now, looking back, that I think what destroyed me a lot was he realized what he was doing. He knew that he was making me, you know, all along, everything we did, adore him and love him and fight for him, fight for us, and give up more of myself and hide more of myself away and give him more, when he never felt truly much. I think my feeling is like my father, that he didn't actually feel anything real for me, because everyone makes mistakes, right? We all fuck up. Everyone hurts people. We say we're sorry, we mean it. And the way that we know someone's sorry is because they don't repeat the behavior, right? Some people who look you in the eyes the deepest and hold you the tightest are the ones that enjoy when you suffer. That was a degree of darkness I wasn't prepared to face.
Like somebody getting off on your sorrow.
Yeah. And endangering me, betraying me again and again. And I didn't see it. You know, I didn't see it. Every time that I saw it and there was a different explanation, or I was gaslit, or
like feasting on your real energy, like feasting on your real energy.
Yeah. Which is, I think, why I became so super hyper aware of dark energy over the last few years. And, you know, I, for the better part of a year, so it all ended in a restraining order, which expired 2 days ago. So I'm a little extra emotional this week. Not because I'm afraid that he's going to come like to my house and hurt me, like beat me up with his fist. It was never that. I mean, those kind of things happened between us, but it was the tiny percentage, right? That's, I wouldn't even speak on it, honestly. But he used the simplest sentence would be that he used my vulnerability and my innocence and my trust in him and used consensual sex to rape a much more sacred space inside. And I thought all along that he didn't know what he was doing. I believed he was so broken from things that happened to him, right? He was such the
You
victim.
were so good that the same way as bad people project on us, good people project on them. And so you were so good, you were putting what you would do in him and the way you would treat people in him and the way you would love in him. And it's the opposite that happens, but good people give like good face to bad people sometimes, the same way bad people like gaslight.
You're exactly describing it exactly like, I mean, and the experience of it, you know, for the better part of a year, I remember every day I would sit, and my oldest daughter said I was only allowed to say it out loud once a day. I wasn't allowed to say anything else about the situation out loud because of it being unhealthy. And my oldest daughter's got some wisdom, right? 19 years old. I wonder who she reminds me of. But I would say, I hope. There was a movie that I saw. I don't remember who said it. It was like Angela Bassett or Whitney Houston. Someone said, maybe it was like in Waiting to Exhale, I hope he catch a disease and his dick fall off, right? I said that every fucking day, tears running down my face. Because there was such a sexual addiction component to what went on between us, which I had no inkling to what that even meant or what that was, right? Like, I don't even know if I fully understand it as I'm talking. Like, you are the only person I've talked to openly like this. I've told my sister some things, but like just to sit and open roll talk about it, like, I don't know that I fully understand, right? I've spent the last year watching, you know, ASSC Direct on YouTube, you know, Quinn Holiday, he helped me save my fucking life, and like, you know, Spiritual Whistleblower and Narc Survivor, and there's like a few that I listen to and I watch. And I hesitated to talk about any of this because, God forbid he ever hear this. One, I don't want him to have yet another chunk of me or to know how much he won, right? But whether or not he loved me, it's funny because some of my life coaches say, you didn't love them. Well, that's not true. I loved him. I love him still. I pray to God every day that he never, ever cross my path again. Because what's within him is an enemy with what is within me. Well, we are enemies in the spiritual realm. And I am weak for his big tears and his promises and his touch on the terrestrial plane. And as complicated and fucked up as that is to say, I mean, I'm not going back. There's no danger that anyone's going to see us with our Facebook pictures up again, right? Like, I know that it's over. I know what day it was over. I've never cried so hard for so long. And I will say, of all the shit that I've told you that happened in my life, I do think that this was part of the plan that was written for me. As God says in Psalm 139, all my days were in your book before one of them came to be. Because not having the noodle salad life means that I can talk about these things with a powerful voice, and someone else who is stuck in the dark with someone who they don't understand, who they're Googling their behavior, who they don't understand why they keep leaving, who they don't understand the tears and the crying with the betrayal, when they're confused about what's happening to them and about how who they are is disappearing. Maybe somewhere along my path, someone's going to look back and say, but she did it. But she fucking climbed back. And that isn't the end, right? If I can love that powerfully. Because I think, you know, 20% of it, the gaslighting, the manipulation, the lying, the cheating, that part, that fucking ruined me, right? I thought he was fascinating. I never would have left him. If it hadn't been for the betrayal, I never would have left his side. He was, and I can only speak for me, he was my companion in every way that I could have allowed a human being to have access to me. And I would and did do any and everything for him that I could.
Your honesty, by the way, does not make him a winner, and it doesn't make you weak. I think it shows like how big your heart is, like the depths of how much you love. And I think your honesty, it's it's real. I don't think being able to still say that I love somebody and still be strong enough to be like, but they're not good for me.
Yeah.
I think that fucking loving yourself that much, and as hard as it is for you to say right now, he's the hardest drug I've ever fucking done and the hardest fucking drug I've ever quit. Maybe the most out of all the trauma that you've went through, the biggest trauma.
The biggest trauma, hands down.
And for you to still say, I love him. I mean, that's kind of what I would think like the Christ journey is kind of about, is that forgiveness and love. That would be the philosophy of Christ if I were to break it down and just put it into a philosophy, to get to a full place of even the Romans beating you to still love them. That
Absolutely.
seems
Because you realize that someone's behavior, what he did to me in terms of my spirit and my soul and what he took, I know that didn't have to do with me. I know I didn't wrong him, right? Like, I was my best self with him. Probably because I knew right from the start that he was very broken, like I am very broken, and that he'd had a hard go, and something in me latched on to that little spark of vulnerability into all the ways that he had been done wrong.
And when demons are in people, it can see light. Like demon doesn't want other demon. Demon doesn't feast on demon. Demon doesn't get off on that at all. Demon only wants light. Demon only wants godly. Demon only wants people that are attached to source. That's what it feasts on the most. It doesn't want fucking darkness in the club at 4 a.m. getting, ass fucked with a big gimp mask on.
It's true.
Darkness wants inside the happy home and the good heart and
I just couldn't see it, right? I mean, it's interesting. So like I said, I went through this whole phase, and especially because it ended with my knowledge of betrayal. And it's interesting, and I say this, and this is part of my creed, right? This is my testimony. The moment in my heart I knew he was betraying me, I felt like my soul tear, and I knew I could never, ever go back, right? But the moment that happened, and for many months after, God opened my eyes to all of the things that he had been doing. And that was devastating because I couldn't see it when I was still in his arms. I couldn't see it when he was my partner in my bed. I couldn't see it when he held my hand and promised me the forever that he's probably promising somebody else now, right? And to see one of the women, then who he was pursuing really fucked my world up, right? Made me for a long time think it was me, right? That's, I think, what happens to a lot of people. Get like, I wasn't good enough, I didn't look good enough, I certainly wasn't young enough to compare, right? And I started to find out about all the others and all the other times and all of the times that I potentially was in danger. And then I started thinking, there's all these fucking snakes all around town that knew about me, right? Some of them that I knew, they fucking knew about me. And they knew I was mad for him, right? Like, our love wasn't pretend, not on my end. It wasn't a fling, not on my end. Went on for 2 years, right? They fucking knew. And they were sleeping with him behind my back. And it made me wish that he would suffer for a long time. I wanted him to get karma, right? I wanted him to pay.
Hurt.
I wanted him to not get away with betraying somebody who loved him so completely. And then I just have realized it wasn't about me. It was never about me, and that hurts too, right? I was just part of some rotation, just some girl, some face, like all the other faces. That's what I think. Like, I don't know what he really thinks or what he really feels, but I know you don't destroy what you love. And I know that a man takes care of what he values, right? And when you see that you're destroying someone and you hear them sobbing and you see them breaking, most people, they stop. They stop. There's something inside of us that stops. It's empathy, right? But if someone doesn't have it, if he couldn't bond with me as much as he wanted to, maybe, I don't know. Maybe he wanted to and he couldn't. But I do know that choosing to entertain demonic energy, it's a choice. At any point, he could have said no. At any point, he could have said no more. And I tried through every way that I loved him. And I loved him and held him higher than my first husband, who treated me and still treats me like a queen among women, right? I mean, he's moved on. I mean, there's nothing, like I say, no romantic love. He honors me and respects me, takes care of me, takes care of our children, right? And I held this man who was so broken and lost, like he was a treasure to my soul, that I would have protected him from anything. But he would not have done the same for me, and he didn't. So all the time around town now, right, I pass him. I see his work truck. I was leaving Home Depot the other day, and as I got to my car and started to leave, I saw just a few lanes over, he was there, which means we passed each other coming in or out of the store, right? He probably saw me. I don't know. Thank God I didn't see him. But it's during this time, to answer your question, that God has carried me, because there were times over this past year where I believed that I would not survive, how badly my heart was broken. And I know that it seems like a silly thing to say, but I have since read that people actually do die from a condition that people call broken heart syndrome.
Mm-hmm.
And I really did physically feel.
It happens a lot with in nursing homes with the couples that are together
Couples.
like 50 and 60 years, where one of them will die and the other one will die like 3 weeks later, 2 weeks later.
Yeah, I thought I wouldn't make it. And for a long time I didn't want to. And then he would have taken not only the pieces of my soul that he took, but then he ultimately would have taken my life if that had happened. I didn't want him to move on or to thrive, and I just sobbed about the women he was moving on with and how he had used me, and everything that I thought was beautiful and pure and magical, he just razed it to the ground. I don't know what his story is with other people, and I don't want ugly things for him in his life. You know, for a while I started to think, I wish everything for him that he has coming. I wish him the same as what he put out. But I don't wish that for him, right? These are all the little stories that I tell myself in my head when I'm spending all this time ruminating about all the things I coulda, shoulda, woulda, when I coulda walked, should I stayed, was it really me? Can I really call out my abuser? Do you even want to say abuse? Does that mean it's over between us forever, right? There's all these fucking conflicting, horrible thoughts. But at the end of the day, every day, I pray that the seeds that I planted in his life would grow to an understanding of these energies that he entertains, and that he will come to find God at the end of it, whether or not I ever get to see his face again at the end. I pray for his soul, even though he took pieces of mine away. But to see him, to have to run, into him in a store, I think it would buckle me. I won't go running to his arms, but to have to look him in the eye after everything, as horrifically and screaming and tragic and sobbing, and my family involved, and all the horrible shit, the way that it went down at the very last moments, I just don't want to see what else I can survive. And so I prayed the other day, and I don't I don't have any powers or any energy of my own that is of mine, right? Mine is whatever I have is what God's given me. That's what I believe, right? But I just prayed, like, God, I pray that you would just bind this energy and give me peace from it, right? Like, I know it's out there and you know my heart and I am yours. And I am asking my Father to bind this energy from me because I don't feel confident or strong enough to face him on my own. And I hope that I never will. And it has everything to do with the fact that I know that there's nothing within him that can be pure for me, because that's not the choice that he makes. And
Isn't
so
for new you. It's like there's no going back to that. Like you now with the scars that you have, even if you met him today, there's never doing that again.
no, and I'll never be there with someone again either. And I think too, like, I tried to date a little bit, right? There was that moment where I didn't realize I was trying to rebound, but like a few months later, right, I don't even term it that, because this person I very much care for and love and all of those kind of things, but like it's just not the same, right? And I wasn't healed, and I'm not healed. And I got on some dating sites. I think it was on like Match.com, and fucking I broke down and got on Tinder. That's a shit show, right? I got on a few, and I was just like, all of this energy, it's all the same. All these people, they're all looking like they're feeding their lower selves, they're feeding their darker selves, they're feeding their lower vibrations, and I don't want it. I don't want it. And I hate, like, I have buddies, I have, like, guys that could come hang out, and I hang out with them sometimes. I'm sure that there's a couple of, how we all have admirers. I'm like, sex is not hard to come by, right? I don't want to just have sex, right? Like, I miss having the person that I loved hold me, wrap his
The
arm
whole
around me at
thing.
night. The chemistry, the closeness, like our little moments, right? Like, it's not like when people think about abusive relationships, like, oh, well, he did this or she did that, or he, like, right, I'm an enabler, like 10% of it's my problem. Like, I get it, right? And I'm not saying
Brought
than
up
what he put out.
Whitney Houston. You said Angela Bassett from Waiting to Exhale. When's the last
Yeah.
time you watched that movie?
I don't know, what, 3 or 4 years, 4 years.
You should definitely watch it again, because I think you will have your exhale, and you're not free of it right now. You're still not, and you're not.
Right.
But there is that moment, I think, in life, and sometimes it's relationships, and sometimes it's deaths, and sometimes it's a fucking COVID-19 motherfucking teen. Hopefully one day we'll all be able to take a collective, but
Right.
I think there's just those moments where you're like sitting, and maybe it's around a fire pit or on the beach, or maybe your family's just around and it's a meal and everyone's around, and you're sitting back and you're looking at your life and you're like, everything's okay.
Yeah. I'm waiting for that moment where I, like, laugh and, like, and that's it. Like, there's nothing that comes after that, like the ruminations or the bad feelings or the memories or I know it will come, right? Because I've healed. It took some time to heal from my mom, and that was a big life changer.
And as a
It
collective,
takes
we
time.
are all getting to this place. Like, there's no secrets where we're going. Like, this next layer of high 4D or 5D or Christ returning with our Christ conscious, whatever religion you believe in, we're leveling up, and
Yeah.
we're going to a place where our authenticity and our pains and our hurts and being courageous with our words because of those, if we really want this new future, it's up to us to have these words and recreate it with each other by not allowing the same things that damaged that asshole who damaged you, or your dad who damaged your mom, and the dad who damaged. It's like those societies existed because secrets and everything was always brushed under the rug, because women like us were too scared to say anything, or too scared to have these conversations, or too scared to, and men need these conversations too. I'm just speaking
Right.
for women, but I
Right.
just
Of
think
course.
there's an amount of vulnerability and tears, and something that, with the laugh tracks and the 24-hour news cycles, and I think they've tried to, like, slowly condition away our humanity. And I think
Absolutely.
these conversations and feelings and emotions and laughing and tears, this is how we get it back. And
So
I think this is how hopefully a 17-year-old kid never goes through it because of a
right,
conversation like this that we couldn't find when we were 17.
right,
And I feel like this is how
right,
we change the cycle, by just being authentic and standing in our truth, being kind with God in our hearts and knowing we're connected to the whole,
right.
then walking our path. And all the shit that happened behind us made our machete bigger to clear it, like you're saying, for other people.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think, I think it's in, and I was thinking too, like my kids were watching these things, right? I'm literally like living out a pattern that I lived out. You know what I mean? Like I couldn't have it, I
But
couldn't
you
have it.
saying this, you're breaking the pattern. You being
Yep.
brave enough to say this, and it's your truth, and saying it here. And you didn't say anything that I wouldn't be proud of. I think you're brave for saying all this. I think anything about you, I think you're fucking beautiful. I think your voice is amazing. I love your show. Um, I I don't know. I think you should say it more. And I don't think you should ever be worried about the things you say or the point of view that you come from. I think you should have tons of courage in that. And I think you should feel your triple Sagittarius. I think you are a rare breed.
I appreciate that. I appreciate that a lot, actually. It has been a journey back to my voice for sure. And because it's
Fire
also
is the most purifying element. Everyone
it
forgets it. They think it's water, but it's fire. And fire is also the scariest element. It comes in tears and screaming sometimes, but it is very
it's
purifying.
well, no one will say that I'm not intense, and that's for sure. So, but yeah, all of these things led me to Scott and Ed at the Truthzilla podcast, and that's how you and I ended up
Yeah.
meeting through the podcast world, right? And it was through, and so it's been all of these things to say everyone goes through some heavy shit. Everyone has some baggage to offload, and I think part of the mistake has been thinking there was a time frame or a certain way, or like that I couldn't feel, there's a lot of ambivalence, right? I feel very strongly in polar opposite areas, right? Like life is more complicated than public school laid out. How about that?
Yeah, a lot more
And
complicated.
and talking to, other people, it somehow sets feeling not a part of, or feeling disconnected from, or feeling different, or like I don't fit. It somehow makes puzzle pieces fall into place, because we all have these really incredible stories, like even the noodle salad stories, right? I love hearing people's noodle salad stories. Like I need to hear that. I need to hear that there's more than moms hanging on cords, and like, lovers who don't love you, and like maybe you're never going to love again, or like maybe, like your kids might take the COVID vaccine, like, you know what I mean? Like there's hopeful stories out there, and there's the process through it all, and there's, like you say, that humanity that this whole COVID pandemic bullshit has corrupted away from us, and we know how much the deep state has tried to pervert the family unit, I mean, now they don't want us touching, they don't want us talking, they don't want us reproducing, they don't want us, gathering. It's like, and there's like this grand global suffering of trauma that's happening. People who are, like I said, friend from high school who took her life, over the lockdown. There's that's a lot of there's a lot of stories. There's a lot of people out there that they're struggling with ambivalence. They're feeling confused. They're feeling like, like me, sometimes I'm like, fuck it, was like 81 degrees today. I made it to the lake. Holy shit. And I'm back in the car. Now I'm thinking about all this shit that I ruminate on, and it ruined the rest of my fucking day. Right. Like, but then there was that 80 degrees at the lake, and all of a sudden it was 2 days. And like, there's ladders up out of the dirt. And it's true. All of these stupid little memes that are like, oh, well, they buried us. They didn't know we were seeds, but that
Yeah.
shit's true. It's true. And it's interesting because we don't come back as the flower they ripped up. We come back as like something much more mighty and
Sequoia
magical
tree.
and powerful. Yeah, like trees, like, flowers, they come up easy from the root, right?
Yeah.
But trees, and I feel like trees, and I heard somebody say this, and I'm going to say it too, like trees are like people. Like some people, they're like the leaves on a tree. Like they're around for a little bit, but the wind blows and they're this way, they're that way. You don't count on them. Some people are like, you know, they're branches and they're a little more sturdy, but if you get out there too far on them, they're going to break under the weight. And some people are root people. And those are the ones, right? We all have to have those root people. We all have to have the stories that connect us to our roots. And we have to figure out, like, I think that we're all connected. You know, there's this, especially like all of us who are awakened, there's this mass awakening that's happened that's connected so many people in such a real way. Like, what are the chances that you and I 2 years ago ever thought we would just be sitting here talking like this, right? You know, it's
If it was up to you, never.
Oh my gosh, I know. Oh my god, it's bad too when we're doing the podcast. The guys are like, all right, well, we were supposed to go on such and such as do whatever, but they're going to go live, and I'm like, well, I'm going home.
I know that was the
first
time we were ever going to hang out.
and then too, Scott was like, well, they're going to probably ask us some questions. I'm like starting to cry in the kitchen. I'm like, write them right now and tell them not to ask me any questions because I get too stressed out. Can you just tell them I get too? Poor Scott, he has to I get emotional. So, but Scott's amazing. As to our podcast, he has this incredible gift at producing and interacting and putting stuff together. He really is a born leader, and he is very, very good at it. He is not one of those, I would put a lot of stake into saying that Scott is not a corruptible character. And it's very moving to see men move like that in this society. Ed, same, solid through and through, so much class, so much integrity, these guys. I mean, Ed has like shown up at my house when I've been like, guys, I'm not coming in the podcast. I'm in the fucking dark place. I'm sitting in my room. I'm like, not, and then like, then put the podcast off till later, and Ed show up at my house and like, hey, I just want to check on you. You good? I want to see your face. You want to talk? Like, and I will say I am definitely, more often than not, when we have a hiccup on the podcast, I'm probably the one causing it. I don't like change. I can't imagine why that would be. I'm starting to like pick up on these childhood triggers, but I don't like change of any kind. It really makes me feel unstable, even though I know that's not reasonable. So anytime the littlest thing happens, I tend to like start taking it way off the tracks. And Scott is like trying to like keep me on the tracks, and like I tend to like start getting really emotional with Scott.
You have to
and
trust your
Ed.
boys on the podcast.
I know.
And you just let them hold the reins with that, and they know and respect you well enough. And
Yeah,
I think you guys are doing a good thing over there.
I've been doing better about that. Like Ed's the peacekeeper, Ed's Switzerland. So
he seems like it. He also seems like he always lightens the like if I'm just guessing, if you guys were to ever get dark, intense, he always, because he just seems like he's charming and funny. I only see the pictures that you guys all put up and then listen to the show, but just like the energy you guys must have off air.
It's so true. He really is. I really adore both of them. I genuinely love both of those men. We like regularly, I will tell them like, I love you guys. I value, I appreciate this. Like, they're good humans. You know, I'm lucky to know them. And the podcast aside, I'm very fortunate and blessed to know these two guys and like have them in my corner. It's really, really unique and cool to have like friends, like legit real friends that don't like, you know, live 600 miles away. You know, when I moved to Oregon, I had the girlfriend I left behind that was in California. You know, I have had, you know, like as you're an adult, a lot of your friendships, they kind of taper down, they get smaller. And I think like having kids, it's harder to meet new people. I'm not clubbing. I'm not like, what do people do in their 40s? I don't know. I think it's pretty unique and special. And Ed always says like, we're brought together for a bigger purpose, right?
Yeah.
Like the three of us together, that's a purpose. And so
like a Florida studio.
Like I know. Well, I was looking all day at Truth Beach, and then I reached out and I was you're right. That other place I was looking at was pretty close to Georgia, but it's so pretty. And I'm like, I have to drive 5 hours and 23 minutes to get to Chaney. I don't know if I can do that. So I'd have to look for closer to you, I think, for sure. Because that's what I was telling John this morning. I said I was sending him these like houses and the properties out there. And I was like, I don't think I want to drive 5 hours away from the one person that I know. I said, so we have to at least move close to the one friend that I have because I know it's going to blossom over there. So Anyway,
Pretty
so
big stuff. And I mean, like you were saying, how you had friends in Hawaii and friends in Thailand and friends in, that's what I feel like with this internet world. I have great people in my real life, like all next to me. I can go across the street and go next door, and I have amazing, I'm really blessed. Like I go into my job and I don't have to wear a mask at work. No one wears a mask in my establishment. It is, everyone I work with is like pro-American, awesome. Like it's just amazing. Everything about my town, I couldn't say enough. Everybody's good. But in my spiritual like thing I've been on in the last 6 months, I feel like if I didn't meet my online people, I don't know where I would have been. I would think I would have really lost my mind. Like I think I was on the like when my empathy opened up in my heart chakra, I think my logic did not know what the fuck to do to handle it. And I
yeah,
really thought, oh fuck, I'm going crazy. And if I wouldn't have had online people and vulnerable enough and at my own stages, and also I'm not very trusting, so to be vulnerable and to just, okay, this person Megan could be anyone, here's a really
right.
weird thing about my life. And
Probably a CIA shield,
yeah,
likely.
totally, it's like she works for Hillary Clinton probably.
Oh my gosh, dirty
I
words. Oh my God.
I know, but it's just like I feel really blessed, and we all must be doing something for a bigger reason. And I still don't believe when I watch the news, like the fiasco that they say is going on. Today, this will be the first thing that dates my podcast. Today, Washington, D.C. became the 51st state.
What?
Yeah, that's a pretty big deal as far as the chess moves of our country are concerned. If you're
I
still,
hadn't, I had not heard about that. Wow.
yeah. That really changes
Wow.
up like voting. It's good for the people of DC because they get treated kind of like a Puerto Rico where they're just a territory. But
Right.
then DC as a whole has just been a foreign country inside our country for as
Right.
long as we've been a country. And now it's under the same guidelines for the first time ever as the rest of America. And we still have the fences
Interesting.
around the Capitol. No one believes Joe Biden's in the Capitol. I'm like, what is happening?
Who even believes he's the real president? I mean, not to go down that fucking rabbit hole, but
No,
holy
that's
shit.
why I'm like, you got to
I,
come to Florida where we're a constitutional republic. We have a great governor and we have a good president.
I like it. No, I legitimately, I was looking at Texas pretty strongly. And that's where my oldest daughter ended up moving right after she got married. Everyone's just ripping out my heart lately. What the heck? Like, I found out she was getting married 5 days before she got married, and then she left the next day to move out of state. And then like, I'm just
It's
like,
just giving it to you all at once. My friend Matt said, you have to hit rock bottom because then you can kick off. Like
that's it.
otherwise you're just falling, 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 falling. But once you hit rock bottom, you get your body can do that crunch and then bing and you shoot up a lot quicker.
Oh, I'm ready anytime. Jeez. But yeah, so I think Florida is a really good, I was saying today to the guys, to Scott, like, because we always talk about like where we go when we go all, right? The three of us were like, we're
Yeah.
a family. During these times with all the division and everything crazy, you got to hang on to your people, right? Like, you got to be with people who are of like mind and who love you, like love you no matter what. Like, I don't care, like, outside of harming other people, right? We're talking about like normal humanity, like who really, like, I respect you, I accept you,
My friends are
whatever.
my family. Like your friends are
That's
the
it.
family you create for yourself. Like you're born
Yes,
in bloodlines, but then you get blessed enough to, but I think friends are soulmates in a different way. Like you travel
absolutely.
together throughout lifetimes as well. And you
I
protect
agree.
each other and you are different forms in each lifetime. Like I think sometimes you're siblings and sometimes you're lovers and sometimes you're friends and sometimes it's just a teacher and a student. And it's just, but I think those souls always find each other.
Yeah, I think so too. And I see that more now, like more and more, right? All of these things had to happen, and then I had to be alive at this particular time and worry about and I'm like in the place that I'm in. Like, here's the thing too, like, I think about like, okay, what's the purpose of everything? Like, I have this little meme where it's someone like walking into the ocean with their clothes on. Like I think about that like in a joking, sarcastic, I'm just gonna
I
fucking
think
go
when
on.
honestly, when we first met or like really first became friends, you probably put a meme up like that where it actually took months later for me to verbalize, oh, I think I was really depressed when I was fantasizing about walking into the ocean and being a mermaid. Like,
Yeah,
I was like, I just want to breathe water. I would go to the beach every day and just stand at the edge in my clothes. Like, I just want to walk in there and
I'm
just
just gonna and like I'm not thinking like of repercussions. I'm not thinking of I'm like that's the part where your inner voice is just like you're just gonna
breathe
just
water.
go.
See, but
Just
my inner
go
voice
for it.
started to get all fantasy with it. Like, I think you could do it. Your fear is the only thing holding you back.
Shit. Your fear's the only you got a fucking tail in there. Get in that water.
Yeah, haven't you seen the abyss? You can breathe that.
Um,
You breathe it for 9 months in your mom's belly. Walk in.
oh my gosh. Oh yeah. So I totally get it. I totally get it. I think that but all that to say, I was telling the guys this morning, so I messaged them a couple of pictures of these properties and a little place that I found, and we talk about like, okay, well, where we end up, we're gonna try to all end up because we want to build a studio together, you know, and still like, you know, we have these plans and these dreams and these goals and things that we're gonna accomplish, but we want to stay together and not lose that unity. So anyways, Scott's like, yeah, I was like Googling jobs and like I think like 30 minutes, I don't remember what type, but like 30 minutes from you. And then I was like finding property, and when I was talking about Texas, I really didn't have like any kind of light inside for it. I'm like, well, it's warm, it's cowboy hats, all right, maybe I'll meet a cowboy in some years. I don't know what the hell's gonna happen in Texas, right? Like maybe I can grow some shit. But now, like when we started talking about Florida, when I really actually like legitimately started like looking at properties, I was like, hey, you guys, I'm like, I actually have like a light in my spirit about this. Like Florida feels good inside me. Like I feel like Florida feels good. And that's a crazy thing to say, but since we all understand energy, like, so Scott's like, yeah, I looked and I found, you know, they've got, you know, a job like not too far. And then, you know,
And
so
it's
I
not
don't
what
know.
you know, it's who you know. I know people in every industry. I know people in every industry, and I know good American patriots in every fucking industry. So people that think like we think, that are fighting for freedom and are putting their money where their mouth is and showing up at city halls and fighting school boards to make sure kids can go back to school, fighting school boards to make sure kids don't have to wear masks and all the time. And everywhere in Florida isn't perfect, but it is a constitutional republic. So each county is ran by the mayor's specifications, and that is how everyone should want the entire country to run. That's how it should
Absolutely.
be. And
Yes.
because some places are going to be different, like your county might just have a water shortage that my county doesn't. Let's take the pandemic off of it. Like there's a lot of ways that things need to run. And Texas, I think politically, with the Joe Rogan, the Elon Musk, the media pushed Texas pride on us for the last 10 or 15 years to push Texas for this takeover to happen, because they made Texas this strong state. If Texas falls, remember the Alamo, they're the gun rights, blah, 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 blah. And then that same time why they did Texas pride, they've made everyone think Florida's retarded. Florida, man, I'm sorry about saying that word. I'm really working on it. I don't want to offend anyone. I'm not here to pick apart words, but I'm just not trying to offend.
Of course. I got you. I got you.
But yeah, I just think they've been mocking Florida like everywhere, but it's for a reason. There must be something really that they've set up in the laws here that isn't as easy to take over. There has to be some reason that we're the only state that didn't shut down. We shut down for 8 days or something the entire year last year.
Oh, wow.
At all. We did spring break. Remember all the news when they were like, look at Florida still doing spring break, and this is this time last year. Everywhere.
I love my kids. Oh, sorry to interrupt you.
Oh no, I was just like, all the small businesses I know thrived. People really did go out of their way to make sure, like, it was a lot of stuff that what I loved about Portland, I saw people do here when it mattered.
Right. Right.
It's like everybody did it in Portland when they were rich and everybody was having fun and making their $1 million a night in the service industry. It was so great to shop local. But the second everything shut down and they're all at Walmart, it's quite a different, they didn't put their money where their mouth was.
Right. Absolutely. And I think that my biggest push at this point is like, And I know, I mean, Ed has children also, you know, we want a life for our kids. We understand what's going on. We see what's happening. And like my life is, all things being equal, I'm halfway through it, right? But I've got little kids. I've got kids in their 20s that I want a future for. And so does me moving off grid and homesteading, which is where my mind has been all year, what I've heavily looked at most. But then like, how do they find partners? Like, how do they, like,
How
I'm
do you
not worried
protect
about,
yourself if the real world does fall around underneath you and you're just on a farm alone?
you know,
Like,
so yeah, I'm just like,
you need community.
I need some community, but it needs to not be like, I think for so many reasons, but Oregon is, there's nothing left here for me. You know, like I've got my oldest son lives, you know, like an hour north, and you know, my youngest of my oldest sons, who will be, like I say, 19 next week, he still is at home. But you know, my three little ones can go with me. You know, my
Are you
almost
from
19-year-old,
Oregon or California?
California, I'm California Bay Area, but I can't obviously go back there ever. Like that's, there's no home for me there. Their political ideology and the way it's just, it's
I
ugly
think
there.
everybody should, if you're lucky enough to, if you're blessed enough to be born American and you have this huge plot of land that you can go to any of these places, I think you do a disservice to yourself to not live on the other coast.
Yeah, and it's like you say, like the only thing I ever have seen on it is like either CSI Miami or like people posting shit memes about Florida, or like that's just where, you know, that's where people go to retire. There's nothing there. There's not, it's just bugs and swamp. There's nothing there. And then I like see pictures and I see stuff growing and I see the beach and I like, and I'm like, oh, you know, like the stories that you hear, and if you don't seek stuff out, you just have
We
this
have
picture
3
in your
growing
head.
seasons here a year. No one talks about it. Like in Oregon, you can only grow for what, 1 season, maybe 2.
Maybe
We
too,
only
maybe.
can't grow in the summer, and we can grow in the summer with a greenhouse. We have all the right temperatures. We just get too much sun, so you just have to have the shade. So you can technically grow in Florida year round. I also think the panic of living in a big city is because deep down as a human being, you know, if your power turns off, how many days till you can not feed your family. Here,
Right.
if the power goes off, not only does every other person have a generator because we live through going without our power 2 weeks every year, but there's you can go into any watering hole and grab a fish. You can grab a turtle. You can grab a rabbit. I mean, there's so much wildlife here that I think that human panic of not being able to provide doesn't exist because our waterways can feed all the people. If all of the New York all went without power, do you think there's enough fish in the bay to feed them? Do you think there's enough,
Right.
if San Francisco goes without power, you think there's enough fish? You think they can all go find fish to feed themselves? I don't think they
Right.
can. In
No.
Florida, I think there's enough land, enough waterways, and with a very minimal skill set, you could still feed yourself. And I think just
That's,
as human beings, we know that. And that's got to be anxiety that we're not relating to when we're trying to go to sleep at night.
I think that that's true. That, and like, you know, and the idea of, like you said, they're legislating. I mean, I know we had, who was it? Brian Festa, I think, but he's Connecticut, I believe. But you know, they're fighting all over to try to get the kids to be able to go to school without the mask. The reason why my kids are still not in school and they're being homeschooled and not online is because of the mask. I won't mask them for school. I mean, I finally broke down. I said all to be a lie, I won't mask my kids. Well, I finally, like 6 months in, I had to take them to the fucking grocery store. They were tired of sitting in the house, but I have to mask them. It sickens me to my soul, right? So we have these little kids on the hill that they play with, but how many years can they play with the same 2 kids? Like that's not a life. They can't go to gymnastics. They're not going to go to ballet. They're not going to, like, sports around here, even outdoor sports. They've got the kid masks. I'm not doing that to my children. I'm sorry. I'm not sorry. I came to die on this hill. That's not going to happen. They need to have a normal life. And I know there's some groups here that they've tried to get, like, you know, some families of similar thinking, you know, together. It tends to be, I think, like younger kids, what I've seen online. But families getting together and like no mask and going on like play dates and picnic dates and stuff. But at the end of the day, if we want to go into a museum or we want to go to school or we want to go to gymnastics, or I mean, even the jogging trail by my house, I live in the South Hills, so it's all, you know, uppity bunch of assholes on this side of the city. But they've even got big, like those big, whatever, what do I want to say? Like an A sign, you know, the ones that are held together at the top by the chain, and it opens up at the bottom like an A.
Oh yeah.
And so on both sides it says you have to be masked to be on the outdoor running trail. Outdoors.
Fuck that.
Across the road from my house. And I'm just like, my kids, what we do, we drive around town and my kids are counting cars, all the people that have the timestamp on their back window that says it's 15 minutes after the person got their vaccine. So all over town, there's all these people with their virtue on their car driving all over. So my kids are counting cars, but yet they haven't been in a classroom. They have, except for taking them to jujitsu once, which my kids don't love jujitsu. So that's not probably where they're going to keep going, right? Like there's not a ton. I want them to have a life. I want them to not only have a life now, I want them to be able to have a life in the future, meaning that they can date, you know, at some point, meaning that they can, I don't know, maybe school's going to not be an option if everyone has to be vaccinated by the time that they are in college, but there's trades they can learn. And I hope that they do, because frankly, the whole idea of the schooling system and the way that we've just pumped people through thinking you have to be doctors or lawyers to be anything good, and not letting people actually bloom and blossom in their gifts, that's one of the huge things that schools and society in general has corrupted us away from our children. They've, you know, with the family unit, with
It's one of the biggest breakdowns
creativity
of America is taking the trades out of our schools and taking the trades out of the kids' hands. They used to teach kids how to weld, teach girls home ec, teach us ethics, it's like there used to be a lot of weird stuff that went on in high school that definitely got, just in our lifetime, we saw it go away. And so I'm having kids go through and seeing what they're learning now. You're like, what in the good God is this?
I'm like, we never, I think for like 1 year, we let them try like 1 year, maybe across a year and maybe another part of a year total. We let them try public school, but I went to public school and I know how shitty it was then. One of the main reasons I didn't want my kids in public school had nothing to do with what was being taught, because when I was a mom in my 20s, I had no idea about the brainwashing or the indoctrination. I was a total statist. I had no clue. I was ready to go to war over 9/11, right? So like, but I also, oh shit, I lost my train of thought.
I don't know where it was either.
Anyways, but the schooling
that you didn't, it was never even about what they were teaching them in school. You didn't care about that in your 20s.
I was bullied. Like in high school, I used to go into the bathroom and pull my feet up on the toilet and sit and eat my fucking sandwiches in the bathroom. Like I used to get, and I think because I'm a tender spirit, I've realized more, like there's a lot of innocence to me, you know, or a lot of naivety, or a lot of, you know, I'm maybe a little bit too open.
I know. I think tender spirits, I meet them and I think they, demons. And because I don't think everyone instinctively is a bully, and not every bully comes from a bad upbringing. It's just, I think playing Ouija boards and drinking alcohol and doing weird drugs and being around weird people, we open ourselves to
absolutely
some entities, spirits, and they enter us. And, I think that spirit is easy to see and attack innocence. And so when there is those certain few pure souls, and I can see your face right now, and I can see you as a kid even before I ever saw those pictures. And I just think you do have that innocence, that it's like, I mean, I know you're not innocent and life's fucking been shit, but I feel that innocence still from you.
There is an innocence to me, and I didn't realize it until after the situation I went through, that I'm, you know, this, you know, love affair. I didn't really realize that about myself. And I really felt some degree of tragedy or bitterness, like, fuck, I lost my innocence. Like it's powerful. Like I was molested as a child. Like I've been through some shit, and none of that ever made me feel like this, like hollowed out in my soul. Right. But I still feel that innocence. I still know that at the core of who I am, I've been through a lot, and I see a lot, and I know a lot, and I perceive a lot, and all of those things, but there's something about me that has an innocence to it, whatever that may be. And I think that is the reason why I try to be now hyper aware of energies, because I want to be careful with myself. I don't want to be like, it's not like you're just going to beat somebody down and then therefore they're just a tough guy. Like I'm not a junkyard dog, right? I mean, I'm not saying that anyone should do that to animals either, because they're spiritual beings. So don't get me wrong at all there, but I'm just like, you know, there is, and I think that in people in general. Like I have, you know, my daughter who doesn't have quite so much innocence in her personality, and I have a little boy that does. I think you always protect everybody as much as you can in the ways, and you try to love people in the best way that they receive love, right? Not just in the best way that I love someone, but in the way they receive it. And those are usually different things. But I think that in society, in life, and when we think about like what they do to children with sex trafficking, the satanic rituals, and what they do to, you know, people to get them into high positions in power, and all this psyop and all this damaging shit that they're doing, what they're doing is they're damaging the inside, right? The parts you don't see. So I think that it is not a small feat, and something actually to be honored and upheld when we protect innocence and vulnerability in whatever forms we see that. When we protect the innocent among us, when we protect the vulnerable among us, we help to uphold the higher vibrational energies, because vulnerability isn't weakness. And that is another lie I think we get told.
It's so beautiful. It just means you're to be vulnerable. You trust past the person. You're trusting the situation and your timing and what you're supposed to do. It has nothing to do with the other person. It's your walk, and you're trusting that. And that's your authenticity. And it's important. And sometimes it's not even important that the other person hears you, but sometimes you just need to say it.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So yeah, Chaney, Florida.
Right. Yes. I will totally. Do you have anything? I think you're so fucking magic. I am so glad that you're a Jesus girl and that you shared that. And
well, thank you for letting me. Of course, now that we've talked, and I'm like, now the whole time just berating myself, like, why did you say that? Why did you say that? So I'll probably have to ask you later to listen to this whole thing, but
that is totally fine.
But, you know, it feels good to talk with somebody who is such a spiritual, energetic person. Like, you know, even when we've talked prior to now, and I probably should just say this to you in text later, and I probably will, but you know, there's been moments where we've just written each other like late at night, you know, or whatever. It's your time frame where you are and mine where we're doing our shit, and we say whatever we say back and forth, and we just like connect for a minute. But those are some moments in my life that are going to always stand out as the memorable good ones. You know, like I was standing in the kitchen with a buddy the other day, and he had this artichoke bread. It had like these artichoke hearts in it, you know, and I was like bummed out because of everything, you know, things that are going on and stuff that's happening in my life. And I'm like, I just want to talk. Can I come smoke a joint? We're just going to chat, right? We're just good friend. And he slices me. He's like, you're going to want a piece of bread. Because I just got to, I'm like, I haven't been going to the gym. I haven't gone to jujitsu. I'm like, letting myself, I've just been going to the ice cream store every day. I'm eating this key lime ice cream. I'm letting myself go. And I fucking like it. I'm not even dating. It's fine. It's fine. Right? You think it's fine? Is it fine? Am I crying? So he slices me this artichoke bread. And we're standing there, and there's like this weird beam of light. Like, I don't say weird. It was like, it was odd that this beam of light was coming through his window just as it was. And it like split. It was like partially hitting him and partially hitting his fridge. And we're both eating this bread. And I just looked at him and I said, you know what? I said, this is one of, when we talk about the good moments in life, this is one of those. This simple, seemingly moment that we can, like if I was 20, I would never have thought about that moment twice. But now I look at it and I'm like, that was real. Like the simple pleasure of someone who cares for you, offering you a slice of bread, and stand there with you and eat it and smile because there's artichoke heart in it. And like, you genuinely just, there's no expectation. You're just being with somebody. That's how it has been with you. When you and I chat, even though we haven't been able to do the face-to-face, it's real. We can just be, and we know that there's a real energy exchange that's happening, and I'm uplifted by it. Always
I'm grateful for it.
Very much so.
I'm grateful for you, and I feel like we're gonna do this in person someday, like an interview in person, but we're gonna hang out around a fire pit before we do an interview in person. So I hope that's sooner than we actually interview again.
I'm hoping within the next, okay, all things being equal, within the next 30 days, and this is what I need to look into, is like quarantine times. If I fly, is there quarantine, or do I have to take the COVID test? Because I'm not doing that.
No.
Not. I was thinking about coming to maybe see like 3 areas within the next 30 days. So if I come out I want to work it out with you ahead of time because we definitely have to get together if I'm coming to Florida.
For sure. I love
100%.
this. All right, plug Truthzilla and anything that you have to say, and then I'm totally gonna let you go.
Just thank you for having me. Thank you. I'm grateful to you for letting me say all of these weird truths, and I hope it will be a light to somebody. Maybe not today, but maybe it'll be a seed for down the road, and that's all we can do is plant those. So thank you, Chaney.
Yeah. Thank you. I love you so much. And
I love you.
All right. Awesome. Bye.
Bye.
So she has been Chaney, and now she's off to smoke a blunt. See you next Tuesday, you fucking cunts.
Sometimes I feel like I just carry all that energy with me, and I don't like to put it. I don't know. You said you don't feel like I have like that dark whatever, but
You don't at all. You really don't
Okay.
at all. You do
That's
not
good.
have a heavy energy at all. You actually have like I would always like if I just met you on the street, I always am just like, oh, that's like she knows everything. She's so totally organic. Like she knows everything about every crystal and everything about every spiritual thing. She's so woo woo. She probably meditates every day. Like I would just
Oh my God.
have all these assumptions of who you were.
Oh my God. Can you imagine if people actually looked at me and saw that? That's hilarious. I always feel like that when people look at me, they're like, oh shit, what happened to her? Like, I feel like people can see it on me, you know?
No.
That's good to know. Good.
You look like you're carrying a whole vibe of like total spiritual, like you got it all totally together, like an old soul.
God. I love that. That's great. Thank you so much.
All right.